right, we'll call the meeting to order. This is a special meeting of the Frankfort Plant Board, June 6th, June 7, 2017. I'll ask Kathy if she can call the roll of directors, please.
Member Ludwig?
Here.
Member Green?
Here.
Member Cuba?
Here.
Member Baldwin?
Here.
Member Rosen? Here.
All right. This is purpose of the meeting is to continue our review of the fiscal year 2017-2018 Frankfort Plant Board budget. So yesterday we made a lot of progress in reviewing the proposed budget, and this time I'll ask David if he has anything further to present to the board.
Yeah, Mr. Ludwig, we thought about today, we went through electric, water, telecom divisions, and as we've done in years past, walk through the administrative departments one by one and give everyone a chance to explain what they have planned for the next year and just give it a good once over. And then we do have a few items that came up yesterday that I think we're able to address. I know Mr. Baldwin had to ask about some savings from AMI timing, and I have got some things, some information that would shed light on that, and maybe some other things that came up yesterday. But cover admin, a few questions, and then turn it over to the board with any suggestions they may have as kind of our initial game plan. So I guess go ahead and get started. We've got on the administrative tab of our budget. Let's turn it over. It's starting on page 27. We have talked just briefly about cost allocation for the plant board. Something we work to do is to appropriately allocate cost. We look at direct activities that you can specifically identify and attribute to a division. We allocate those to that division. You know, some things are very simple. If you have an electric employee, they're allocated to electric. Other things are not so simple. Especially as we're talking and focusing on administrative departments today, is how do you allocate those? You could call them indirect or administrative activities that each of the three divisions share, and you need to look at how do you allocate, for example, customer service, the fees related to customer service, how should they be divided among the three divisions? And we've looked to do a little activity-based allocation methodology of what is the activity being performed, or why is the fee or expense being incurred, and try to most appropriately find an allocation method that we can use to distribute to the three divisions. So when you do that, direct allocate to the divisions that they should go to, very clear, and then allocate the administrative indirect cost to each of the divisions. You get a fully allocated cost structure there that really works to minimize cross-subsidization between the divisions. That's very important. We find when you look at allocating those costs, we set rates based on all of we talked about those four pieces. I know we get tired of talking about it, but operating costs, debt service, capital infrastructure spending for each division, and then what reserve balance is appropriate for each division. If you do that direct and that indirect cost allocation method we use, you get to a number. What is the cost, the total cash that we need to account for, and how do we recoup that in rates? So what you get is a cost structure between the three divisions that gives you an accurate representation of what it truly costs to provide the activity. We structure rates appropriately. So you have a lack of cross-subsidizations that people, maybe you're just an electric-only customer, you aren't paying a higher rate than you should because we've used electric funds to pay for a water or telecom service. So that's kind of the thoughts that have been used over the years, and we've continued to do that. And you can tell when you look at our financials, you look at the increase in net position for the year. Every division has more revenue than expenses, that the division is carrying its own weight. There comes a little, sometimes when you look at the cash flow, when you start paying debt service and investing in infrastructure, we sometimes do a little, you could call it short-term loans between electric and water. The water reserves are negative, however, they are paying for their operating expenses. So you have a little timing issue, but it's not a true subsidization at this point. So setting all that up to look at, we have allocated, and you see at our administrative budgets. I'll go ahead and start on page 27. 27 and 28 are a summary showing how each of the administrative departments are allocated between the three divisions. And just for those that might be watching us, I'll go through what those divisions are, or those departments, we should say. We have a general department that kind of is a catch-all for items that you can't put into another administrative or department. We have a general administration, then we have board of directors, customer service department, the finance department, fleet services, human resources, information technologies, meter reading, safety, and support services. And so the expenses that we allocate, directly allocate to each of those departments are then spread out and allocated to each of the 3 divisions for us to produce our financial statements, perform cost of service studies, and things of that nature. I'd like to go ahead and get started on page 30. This is the very first general department. You can see as we flip through these different pages, I think this starts on 30 and ends on 40. Each of these administrative general departments, at the very bottom, you'll see we lay out a percentage of how each of the costs for the department are allocated to the 3 divisions. And we've worked through looking at specifically walking through each line item, like I mentioned before, and determining what is the best allocation factor to use to allocate to each of the 3 divisions. And you can see what the result is at the bottom as we walk through each of these. I'm going to cover the general, the admin, and the finance department because it kind of just all lies together. And then we'll have the department managers for each of the other departments come up and talk about theirs. So starting on page 30, this is our general department, if you would say, or allocation cost center. You can see that these, we call it general for a reason. We're capturing all of our administrative depreciation, for example, our corporate insurance. This is the insurance, general liability insurance that covers and spans across the entire company. So the main points or items, cost items within this are depreciation for the administrative and general assets, and the corporate insurance, which is the general liability insurance. Also, we have in this section, I mentioned and talked about the fees and different rates that we pay to the city of Frankfort, which is in this section as well. And then we have miscellaneous fees and interest as far as revenue and how where we allocate and put that revenue in here. So you can see last year, we had budgeted 1.3 million versus a little under 1.2. 200,000 of that's line 45, the depreciation. It's difficult to know exactly. We start depreciating an asset when the asset's complete and it's in operation. So the assumptions we make throughout the year, if you look where we are budget to actual, we are and tend to be much closer than you would think on estimating when an asset comes into play, when is it's up and running, and when we start depreciating it. So overall, I think we do a good job there. It's hard to know when something will get put into service. For example, a good one is this building we're in today. We have now substantial use of the building. Everyone started moving in, and we will begin full operation here over the next couple of weeks, and we'll start fully depreciating the building this fiscal year. And so you will see, as you notice here on, let's say line 45 again, looking at estimated year to date, the first year of the budget, 17-18, and you can see how we make that jump from 17-18 to 18-19, and primarily due to putting that asset in service. So those are just some of the general things. I'll be glad to talk about any specific item you might want to cover. You can see that we allocate these general items at around 30% electric, 30% water, 41% cable. And I'd be glad to talk about any other specifics you might want to on this section.
I was curious about revenue, miscellaneous revenue, where it says other revenue. What would that be?
I know we've had, you think about there's different types of general fees and charges that FPB has in its tariff. So this is kind of a summary of all of those miscellaneous fees and charges that might come and are part of our tariff. So it's just capturing that additional revenue. It's paid through and charged through the bills and booked in this general section. So you have all kinds of different fees for non-payment, disconnects, things of that nature. Some are allocated specifically to the division, others are just placed in general.
I see. So it's related to billing usually.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Interest is interest income on investments, that type of thing. If there are no other questions, I'll just move over to page 31. This is our administrative department. This is, and you can see and you'll notice in most of these departments, payroll and benefits are usually the highest, if not the highest, if not close to the top, it's the top of the expense item within the department. You know, this is housing, looking at your general manager, assistant general managers, executive assistants, and the things related to the administration building and things of that nature. So when I talk about administrative building, like utilities on 85, you would have most of the utilities related to general administrative buildings would be in this section. We've got trying to think of a few other things. Interest expense. We show the interest expense for the general administrative building in this section as well. And then, like I said, the payrolls and employee expenses are at the highest expense within this category. So I'd be glad to go through any detailed questions you might have. The allocation for this division is 38% electric, 29% water, and just under 33% cable, based on walking through and looking at the actual activity-based of each expense.
David, I mean, once you get to the bottom line, it really doesn't matter. But when you mentioned, like, in payroll why wouldn't, like, John and Vint be their salaries direct charged into their agencies as opposed to charged at admin?
We actually do. We actually have and divide. I think we do 50-50 on
50's an
Vint.
admin and 50's down direct charged in their.
Right.
Okay.
That's on Vint's time, looking at just what activities he's performing.
Mm-hmm.
He is a chief electrical engineer, for example,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of time dedicated specifically to
Okay.
electric. So we are thinking about that as we break up some of those fees.
I mean, in reality, at the end, it all rolls down to the same. But I just was
Exactly.
curious why. Okay.
Yeah. So I am the manager in the finance department, and so I'd like to flip over to page 34 and just talk for a moment about the finance department. We have payroll and employee benefits. Everyone that's in our department hasn't left, so you can see we're pretty easy to predict. We all have we have almost zero overtime. There's 7 of us, so it's pretty stable, and we don't expect any changes throughout the year or any additional staff needed. Legal and accounting is our biggest one outside of payroll, and that's just our annual audit that we do post to the finance department. So outside of the salaries and benefits and our audit, that pretty much wraps up 95% of the amounts within there. You can see we've remained below what we estimated in budget for the year, and that's pretty much it. I'd be glad to answer any questions about the finance department. If not, I tell you what, one thing else I will cover as well, since it's page 32, the board of directors. Every board of director receives $2,400. It's per our statute per year. There are employee benefits with the board being able to participate in our health insurance plan. We have legal and accounting fees regarding to a retainer of our board attorney, and outside of those three expenses, it's relatively that captures the majority of the expenses in the board of directors. We were charging security, and we do that security for board meetings to the board expense as well. That line 15 board is just a general category to capture any general things, and that most of the time has been security services that are provided by the City of Frankfort Police. Unless there are any questions, I think our next department would be customer service. And Monique, I'll go ahead and, I know, come up here to the mic. I know it might be a little hard, but.
I'll be here in about 20 minutes. Good afternoon. Dave, if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and do customer service and follow up with you reading also.
Is it on? Okay. All right. We'll start with customer service, our basic payroll summary located on page 117. We're currently in the process of maintaining the positions that we have. We do have 2 vacant positions. One has been filled as of Monday. We had a new employee that began on Monday, and we had to repost the other position. The candidate decided not to take the position. We do have, if you'll notice on line 115, we're looking at a part-time receptionist that goes in line with the move to the new building and the addition of a drive-through. That drive-through has to currently, will have to be manned.
What page are we on, Michelle?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
page 17.
17.
I'm sorry. And we're looking at line 115. The part-time receptionist. Currently, customer service has 4 staff members that share the position of cashier/receptionist. And with the implementation of the new drive-through, we would need somebody to man that drive-through from 7:45 to 4:30. It has to continuously be manned. One of the issues that we're going to run into is with one of our receptionists, with one of our cashiers being at the receptionist desk full-time and one being at the drive-through full-time. That leaves us with 2 full-time cashiers. At any given time, if one of those cashiers has to be out sick or is on vacation, and then during peak times during each individual day, our peak times are the same as everyone else's because our cashiers and staff have to take lunch the same time as everyone else, so that leaves us with 1 remaining cashier. The addition of the part-time receptionist will allow the availability of the cashiers to be at the station serving customers, ultimately to improve customer wait time, so the customers don't have to wait any additional time. So that's one item that we're looking at. We'll move on to page 79. Under the line item details, we're looking at a consulting fee, which is a follow-up to the transaction survey that we did. We're looking at bringing in an independent consultant, an APPA sanctioned consultant, to provide an in-house facilitated audit and workshop with customer service staff to review our physical arrangements related to our new location and our past practices, and to review processes and procedures to address customer concerns that were pinpointed in the transaction survey.
That's a $17,000 fee, or about 3/4 of the way down, under accounting.
Under accounting.
923,400. Is that right?
Yes.
Can I ask you a question?
You can.
When everybody's moved out here, are we, and I think Kirby and I have talked about it briefly, what happens to the drop box downtown for people that live there that still want to use that? Is the city going to allow us, are we still going to be able to service that? Or, I know we've got one out here, and I just wonder what happens, or, because I think at one time you told us we get a lot of people dropping off payments.
We do get a lot of people dropping off payments, but the intent is to no longer use that drop box because we don't have any way of servicing that drop box and making sure that the payments get to us on a daily basis. So that one, the intent is to dismantle that drop box.
What do you think the impact of that on customer service is to take that out? I guess I just don't have a feel how many people that live downtown you'll come by and drop off there as a convenience, and it's not going to be convenient to drive out here and drop it off. I just don't know how popular it is for people that walk, pay their bills, or live right in that downtown area.
I agree with John. I feel like that box needs to stay there. Surely somebody in support services can pick it up.
That would be a mark.
Yeah,
Yes, and then there's also the banks downtown that also accept our payments.
Mm-hmm.
So there's Republic United and Whitaker Bank are also still located downtown.
Could we try it for 6 months and see whether anybody's actually using it? And if it turns out hardly anybody's using it, then we could curtail it.
Because I know, for example, like Kroger's and some of them, you know, they make deposits, and their employees make them, but I know they call the Frankfort police when they get ready to make their deposits, and the Frankfort police, come by the store when they're making it and follow them whatever time they decide to make them during the day. I mean, I can see the concern with sending the employee there and taking money out of the box, but at least Frankfort police, I've always been under the impression they're very willing to, if you call them and say, you know, we're gonna be taking money out of that box, can you follow us either to the bank or out to the, to this building, that they're more than willing to do that. I would assume they continue to do that.
One of the concerns with that is also, you know, staff time, you know, pulling staff away from, you know, operations daily to go out there and empty that box.
Well, people are creatures of habit, and a lot of people have a habit of wanting to drop the money off in that box.
We'll make arrangements. One thing we probably will do is we'll probably take that box out of service for a few days. It's in need of some maintenance and fresh paint, so we probably will take it out of service for a few days and clean it up a little bit.
Do we need to get some kind of permission from the city to leave it there after we're
That's
out?
our box.
It's ours. We purchased it.
But I guess when we turn over the property on what, August 1, do we let go of anything we got there, or do they have to, I mean, if we're good to leave it there, that's,
I assume the city wouldn't have any
I can't
problems
think of-
because I believe there's a sign there that at some point the city asked us if customers could put their tax deposits in that box or something, property taxes
Mhm.
or something.
Just to add, the only might be an issue is the security for that drop box is in the downtown office, which we are vacating, which will get turned off. So if it's going to be something long-term, we would have to look at another solution for that because of, you know, vandalism, or since it's not supposed to be cash in there, but we know.
Right.
sometimes-
does the city allow, or do we allow the city to put tax payments in there?
I know we did at one point. I don't know if they're still using it or not, but yes, we allowed them a few years ago when they asked us to. It's my understanding that parking lot is in the plant board's name, but, you know, that's another issue. I don't see any problem with it being there, but I'll touch base with the city.
Well, do we have some employees at the NOC building that could take that deposit and, no?
There's nobody at the NOC. The NOC's completely vacated.
Okay. Except for some equipment that we still have there?
Right. But there's no employees there.
Okay.
Okay. That completes the customer service portion. Move on to meter reading line item details. It's on page 86. With meter reading, there are
Before we go to,
oh, I'm sorry.
Why don't we go back to 33, page 33, and see if anybody's got any questions on the sheet that has customer service on it.
What happened, Monique, or maybe David, what happened on line 30? It went from 407 to 429 budgeted for this year, then drops to 131, then flattens out at 124.
What page are you on?
Page 33.
Okay.
This is
There.
what we're,
Not to carry a whole bunch of stuff.
something we're trying to do, and this goes into cost allocation again, is to work to to better allocate. Example of that would be office supplies. For years, customer service, you know, would had a line in their budget that said office supplies, and that was for a mixture of different departments. So, in what we're talking about and encouraging people to do now, and there's certain things that we've done for years, and trying to get away from dumping a bunch of various expenses into one expense account, into breaking it out into a more specific line item. So now, if you buy supplies, finance department, you book it to finance department supplies, and get a better feel for what does it cost us to operate each department division. So that is just a major of breaking out some of those as well.
And a lot of it is moved to the postage and printing line, all of the event stuff, we move to postage and printing because that's what it actually is.
We have Central Forms is the company that does our billing, that sends out the billing and processes all that for us. And used to all of that expense, we talk around $250,000 a year, was in office customer records and collections. And now that postage and printing is where that $250,000 lies for So that's just it's a breaking out of the account into, you can see, it makes sense too on postage and printing where you see that increase go from 18.5 up to $300,000 today.
And so, and then obviously office supplies then based on what, that actually is dropping down then into postage and printing in the out years? Because otherwise, Monique, I have to steal her pencils and pens from you.
It's funny, she, after I sent the budget out to everybody, she goes, you know, I don't know, see if we have any office supplies. I go, we actually allocated every bit of it out of your department. So no, we actually need to put about 500 in or so. And that'll be part of the budget draft too. We've already have a nice list going of small changes that we need to make.
Monique, or just go to United Bank and just clear the deck out there on the free pens and.
Yeah, we've asked customer service to use all old pens in the office.
Swing by support services on our way in.
United Bank.
It's been a while since we talked about this subject. Bad debt expense. I see it here under customer service at a level amount, $250,000. Is all of the bad debt expense allocated to customer service, or is it broken between the departments?
It goes all to customer service, and then it's allocated at the amounts below, at the percentages in the bottom left.
Okay.
We the idea of writing off bad debt is after an account has been closed, a customer account, that they've closed their account and there's 90 days they have a balance on their account. That account is then turned over to be written off. So that's someone who's closed their account, have had no payments since the closure of their account for 90 days, and that account is then considered to be written off, but we do have a collection agency that tries to continue to collect on those.
Written off means basically we're not carrying it as a receivable. Is that the idea?
Yeah, we have it. Yes, we do instead of the direct write-off method, we do the allowance method. So we book an allowance for bad debt that we post. It goes through the expense at the time we post it to the allowance account, and then direct write-offs go against that allowance account.
I see.
So it's just trying to match up the timing of the write-off as expensing it as we think it's going to occur.
In the past, you explained to us that our bad debt expense is very low and is typically less than other municipals. I think it was something on the order, was it 0.3% or 7/10 of 1%, something in less than 1%, as I recall. Was that?
Yes.
That's still pretty much true?
Yes,
and,
it's at or above average utility collection, or I should say write-off percentages. And we talk about benefits of AMI. One of the things with prepaid customer meters with AMI technology, we would think would be able to see that improved even a little bit. So due to the way that, if services are taken and used by a customer, we are getting those services from providers. So we are incurring the fee. If we don't receive payment, utilities are cut off, which does help minimize some of those. And the essential nature of our services for at least 2 of our divisions also helps reduce that as well. Okay. People want electric and water.
How effective are our collection efforts?
Once
it leaves us and we turn it over to, I assume, do we have a personal service contract with an attorney or agency, or?
We have a collection agency that does it for us. How to measure the effectiveness, I don't have like a gauge to give you, but I mean they are successful in collecting some fees. So we are collecting some. Whether it could be, like I said, how to measure that is I'm not really certain compared to what maybe someone else could do, or comparing it to. Yeah, it's a good question on the yardstick to measure the effectiveness of this collection agency, but.
So write-off means charge our allocation account, forget it, but then if we do recover any of it, comes back in as income.
Correct. We will write it off, no longer receivable, not going to be collected. The customer received the service but did not pay for the service, and we are accepting the fact that we will not get paid for that.
Another subject is unclaimed property that ends up with the Kentucky State Treasurer. Do we ever check their website from time to time and the variations of our name to see if we have any assets lodged there and unclaimed property that we can claim for the plant board.
It has been a while since I've done that. I do remember in my time here, we did see a couple of items and asked to have those returned to us. So it's not a bad idea to look at it. On the unclaimed property side, as far as us turning over unclaimed property, mainly customer deposits that did not reach the final customer. We are fully up to date with that amount. I think from the time they're 3 years dormant, we submit those over to the State Treasurer's Unclaimed Property Division. And so there are some out there though for a public service announcement. If you might want to go out and look at the Unclaimed Property website, and you might find some cash that you had left with FPB years ago and have not claimed.
The bad debt represents 0.2%.
0.2 of 1% of revenues.
Yes, $106 million versus 250,000. Bad debt is 0.23%.
And to address Mr. Cuban's question with regard to how do we have an agency that's doing the bad debt collection? Yes, they are doing write-off collection, but our CSRs are also doing collections when customers come into the office and want to request services. One of the first things they do is check to see if they have a previous account with us that could have been inactive, that was written off, and before supplying any new services to that customer, they have to address those write-off balances. And when a couple of years ago, we tightened up the guidelines on them so that they're paid out a lot faster than they used to be in years past. So we're getting that money back a lot quicker.
Hans, under state law, do local governments have the ability to intercept state funds, or just state government?
Intercept state funds.
There's a statute in Treasury that basically said if you owe the state money, that if the state's getting ready to pay you money, tax refund or anything, if you owe the state a debt, that gets deducted from whatever you're due from the state. They deduct child support, a number of things. I just wonder if local governments in general can come in under that statute and intercept state payments.
I've not seen a statute like that. What would help?
I can give you the site on.
Please, sometime.
Okay.
The only statute I've seen that would help our collection efforts is, it's a business. I can't remember this. It's a very limited effect, but it's a business, and I think if it's over, I can't remember the amount, but you can put a lien. It's kind of a lien statute. Some states have lien statutes. We don't.
Yeah.
Kentucky doesn't. But if there were a state statute that gives you a statutory lien, but the most useful thing for us would be a statutory lien on unpaid utility amounts. But we don't have we just don't have the legislative,
right.
Enactment that enables us to go and file, and file a lien on these amounts. That would be one way to really be an effective way to get your funds. And like David said, there are a variety of agencies that you can use. That's the best way to go, because these folks typically go from one place to another, and the agencies collect their, they have a better way of tracking these folks down. Skip tracing is the term that is kind of used in the industry. So
I'll get you that statute site.
Please.
Okay.
Please, we can talk. Thank you. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, we'll move on to meter reading. Meter reading line item detail information is on page 86. Really nothing special to report about meter reading. However, at the time the budget preparation was completed, we did not foresee any significant changes to staffing other than planned promotions. However, in the past couple of days, we've had one person that submitted paperwork for retirement effective July 30th and have been made aware of others that are seeking other employment, both internally and externally, which would significantly reduce staff by year's end. We felt the need to make the board aware of these potential changes in staffing, as we may need to come back at a later date with contract solutions to carry us through until the possible implementation of AMI.
Do you know what the reason is, or have they voiced the reason why they're looking for? I mean, is it the pay, or just they don't think their future is going to be here because of the changes, or why they're looking?
Some of that. They're looking for just that, and looking for other opportunities. I know one may not want to get caught up in the AMI because several of them are eligible for retirement. And then, of course, by the time we implement AMI, if we go that route, others of them will be eligible for retirement. Pretty much the entire staff would be eligible for retirement by then, with the exception of, I believe, 2 people.
What's the training lead time on a meter reader?
About 2 years to get them fully trained to where they can ride by themselves and read and do disconnects and reconnects by themselves.
Do we have any incentive thoughts around trying to encourage those folks to stay with us until that transition happens?
Haven't really thought about it because we just found out about this. I was on vacation last week and I came back and got hit with it Monday. So we haven't had a chance to really look at those things, and really haven't had a chance to actually talk to those people as of yet. They've been out reading meters, and we had cutoffs on Monday.
Is it okay you use as a contractor, don't they?
Yes, they use TrueTech, I believe.
And we have 7 people in the department?
We have 7 people in the department, 1 supervisor, 1 assistant supervisor, and then 5 other readers.
All right.
The
No
meter
other-
reading section was
Page 38.
Unless there are any other questions from Monique, we could.
I'll hobble on out of here.
We've got the next section being fleet services. Now, Mark Redmond is up for fleet services and also our support services. So we can just knock those both out at the same time. So Mark will be going over those 2 fleet services and support services. These are between pages, it'll be on page 35 and page 40.
So on page 35, you can see fleet services expense side of the budget. No real big changes there from last year. Payrolls down a little bit. That's due to retirement. We don't have a replacement yet, so that's there. Probably the biggest difference is on line 65, and you can see we went from like 176,000 to says 80-some thousand as for the budget, but that's really just due to allocating it's different now, and that's what Dave's been talking about, how it will be out to the departments even in the budget. So that's what the difference is there. Any questions about that?
So for example, if Vint has his trucks come in,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to do whatever work you do on them,
Mm-hmm.
you're direct charging right there at the point, as opposed to paying it yourself, then paying it back out. You're direct charging his budget at the point of
Direct from the
his parts.
purchase.
And
It's coded that way, so
Okay.
it's like your department,
Direct.
It still has a code for
Yeah.
vehicle maintenance.
Does Vint pay timely?
I think I thought that. Questions about that? Next, there, we move over to, page 40. There you see payroll is the biggest, big swing in there as well. No real big changes, slightly more on the, maintenance supplies and, some of the, repairs and maintenance, and that's just due to addition of the building, just expecting something, nothing major, I hope. And we still have to maintain the knock building, and got a lot of discussion about that, but we'll still be maintaining that building. Every leader, whatever happens with it.
Are the number of positions the same? Because I noticed on payroll charges, we go from 17, 18 budgeted, a nice jump from 17 up to 18, and then on up there. Is there a difference in personnel, or?
Because of this bill, we plan to add if it's approved in the budget, a custodial personnel. This building is about 2.5 times larger than what they were dealing with before, and so we would like to add a person to that for permanent presence here. In this building, we have public restrooms, which we did not in the other one, and things happen sometimes. and we need someone on site.
Are you looking at doing that by
Yeah.
contract or by hiring?
We want to hire, all of our custodial help right now are employees, and we'd like to keep that. In the past, we tried a contract for a while with someone that serviced there in the cave room, and quite frankly, I spent about 3 hours a lot of my days just people saying, well, are they supposed to do this, did they do that, you know, that kind of thing. Not that we're perfect now, you know, we're not, but, so we didn't like how that went. I did get a quote on this building, and it's about almost $70,000 a year to have that, and you only have permanent staff for that. They just come in and however many, or maybe as many as 8, come in really quick, and then they're done. And so, with as much as going on in this building, we think permanent staff is what we need. So that there is a mess or something that we're not paying customer service people or someone like that to clean it up. Staff will from another floor or from the other end of the building.
Just for the flow of the budget, you can, on page 17 where we have all the payroll detail, you can, it's on the screen now, line 105 is where that custodian's budgeted.
And there with the custodian, we're going to go over there next. You can also see a facilities locator, and we want to add a facilities locator as well. If you don't know what that is, that's a guy, he goes out to people across this area, say, I'm going to put a fence in, or I'm going to build a house, whatever. And so we have to determine what's buried in that area. You usually can't determine by looking at the grass or whatever. And so he does that, and we're required by law to have that done in so much time. Most things are a couple of days. And so since we hired someone just to do that job, I believe, in 2011. And since then, our locates were rising about 300 a year, you know, and so the last couple of years, it's rising about 600 more a year. And so, you know, we have a plan in place for that. And what happens then is, you know, we let the departments know, electric, water, and cable, they all give us a locator. Now, the electric locator, he just does electric, you know. My locator does all 3, anything possible. And so they're sending 3 different people to do the job, that probably my guy and one other to do it, and taking their labor away from whatever I had not doing that day, you know. And so that's hard on them, and they don't do it every day, so that worries them. They want to do the job.
So the net impact of what you're talking about is the other 3 departments won't have to do that anymore, and you'll be doing it for everybody.
That's what we're hoping for. And there always could be, you know, there are crazy times of year. This is the time of year that everybody goes, wow, I want to build something, or put a fence in, or put pool in, or whatever. And so you're just a little overwhelmed, you know, and so you manage that. You know, the guy we got, he's a super locator. We got him from a locator company, and we thought we'd be doing this several years before now, but he's been a keep up and the department jumping himself. So that's what that's about there.
How does the locator, what is their source, what is their reference, what do they refer to determine
Well, there's a couple
what
ways.
may be there?
Yeah, there's a couple ways. You know, our guys, they kind of know what's here and there, but not exactly where it's at. And so sometimes you might hook to something that's existing in some of our facilities, and then you're waving a wand and it's detecting, you know, what's there. And there are times that you might have to use a GPR, ground penetrating radar. Some of the facilities the water has, there's not metal. It's asbestos cement pipe. There's no metal to see there in the ground, and so they may have to use a GPR. It's not easy.
There's no master map, so to speak, of
Well,
underground utilities.
Well, there is for us, but we don't know what, you know, we go to dig, we have to get the gas company to tell us what they got, you
Yeah.
know, or AT&T, or, you know, other utilities. We're not the only ones here, so. There are master maps, but when you get down to it exactly where that is, you know, we don't want something.
Sure.
We don't have to repair it if we can stop that.
So if I called right now, you would send somebody out, and then Columbia Gas would send somebody out, and then maybe even
Sewer department.
sewer department would send somebody out.
Yeah, they mark it all.
Yeah, it's quite a crowd, isn't it?
Get busy out there.
It sure is.
Yeah, marks all over your yard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
Different spray paint and
Yeah, we've always been.
But it still hits out there.
Mark, don't they give you a tight deadline on Mark?
Yeah, it's just a couple of days, and the ones that really are hard on us is sometimes the state's gonna rehab the guardrails down the interstate or down US 60, and so it can be pretty long. You know, you're only allowed to call in a locate for so long. So what they can do, if they choose, is just call one in for this section and then one in for that section, you know, subsequently, you know, and all at the same time. So that makes it really hard, you know, to have somebody, it might take them all day, for a couple of miles or something. So, but the departments have been great, to jump in and help this time, so we're hoping to make it better for them.
I think one thing to remember that years ago, before the economy kind of went south, right before that or so, the plant board used to have the locates were done by each individual department, electric, water, and cable. And we had a number of people constantly doing it, and in slow times, you know, some of them weren't as busy as they could have been. When the economy really tanked, they weren't that busy, so the plant board consolidated into one locator, and that served us well for a number of years. Quite a bit of savings there from a money standpoint. But as Mark's saying, we've gotten to the point where the number of locates in the economy and those things have come back to the point where we at least need to go back to 2. You know, we were operating with, I think it was 4, wasn't it? 4?
3.5 to 4.
4, and we've been operating with 1, so there's been a savings, and we do need to go back to 2 at this point.
As you can imagine, everything water has is in ground. That's electric and cable has a substantial amount as well. And so sometimes you just have to go look. A lot of our guys are great. They go, no, we have electric, we don't have cable, maybe, or something like that. So we try not to waste, you know, that time. But we're just there. You know.
Yeah, on a slightly different subject, last year we had an allocation for going to a trade fair for landscaping and looking at different ways of handling mowing. And is that in the budget again for this year, or?
Yes, and they did attend that, and it
Okay.
still is, it's under, I think it's continuing education.
Page 40, line 20.
Oh, okay.
Would that be it?
Employee activity.
Over on the 88, I think.
Yeah, the very last page of your budget.
Oh, page 88?
So that's the line item detail for support services that gives you the background behind every budgeted item, gives you the breakout.
I see.
Look at continuing education, account GL account 920700.
Oh, okay. Vegetation management. Okay, good.
Probably the next biggest thing in the support service budget is vehicle equipment replacement. And it's, I think that page 18 is and that's, you know, it's, ours is listed as cable, water, 6 vehicles. That we just replaced in the track loader. I'm sorry, thought that was on already. So there's a track loader in there, a bucket truck. All 6 of them easily meet our replacement policy. What we're finding in our policy is that as we have been going through it now for about 5 or 6 years, is a lot of vehicles get pushed out a little bit. We think we'll replace them in, say, 2017, but when we get a little closer, we find that's going to be 2019 to meet the policy, and so that's a good thing. One of the vans in there it meets the policy, but we may have held it another year, but the cost for maintenance has been high on it, and it's had quite a bit of downtime. What reason, you don't necessarily know. Just one vehicle to the next is the way it is sometimes. Do you have any questions about that?
So on the vehicles, did you say we would be replacing any this coming year or not?
Yes, we will. We were going to replace a track loader, a bucket truck, a cable van, and a couple of 3/4 ton trucks with toppers or utility beds.
Okay.
So we're replacing this year. Okay, so on page 18, we see where cables come down to line 70, 75, and 80. And that's your vans, a couple of pickups. Then move over to page 19. And you pay line 340, that's a bucket truck. We're going to get that bucket truck probably for about $250 or a little less, hopefully. We probably would have spent about $15,000 or $20,000 more dollars, but in our garage, we're blessed with some fabrication guys, and so we're going to do a lot of our own fabrication for ladder racks and things of that nature, and everything. So instead of paying someone, it'll save us a lot of money to do it ourselves. Then you can move on down to water, it says to the left, and there's lines 500 and line 505, and that's a pickup with utility body and the track loader. And Katrina's pointing out to me over here that in the cable budget from last year, one of our vehicles is going to roll over. It's just not going to come in until right after July, the start of July. There's two of them actually. One of them's going to be in, the one in my budget's going to come in June, but the other one's going to roll over to the first part of July. So it's in here as well.
It's not.
Oh, it's
It'll
not.
be in the
That's the
second
change. Okay, yeah. But that'll be a change. It's in last year's budget, but 11 months just isn't enough, I guess. I believe that's how long we'll be on, when it comes in, it'll be on order for 11 months, so surprising. Sir, do you have any questions, or?
I think we've got two more departments remaining, Human Resources and our IT department. So Diane Schneider is our Human Resources Director, covering that for us. So we're up on page 36.
Good afternoon. Before I go over the section for human resources specifically, I just wanted to touch about healthcare. And of course, healthcare is really critical to attracting and retaining employees. And I just want to mention that we will continue to be proactive in reviewing healthcare at our mid-year review that we have. It's coming up in July, and we have it annually, and we invite a couple board members to participate. And we work with our consultant to look at ways of things that we might want to change towards cost containment. So we're planning on doing that here in a few weeks, actually. The other thing that I want to mention about healthcare is that this year is the last year in our 3-year rate guarantee with MedBen, our third-party administrator, but we will be asking them to hold their rates for another year. I had mentioned that already to our consultant, and they thought that may be possible. Just wanted to mention those things. And then on page 36, the one thing I wanted to mention is for line 20, which is continuing education, that expense includes our company-wide tuition reimbursement. And according to our tuition reimbursement policy, there's a limit of 12 credit hours that employees can take and receive reimbursement. And so we ask employees ahead of time in advance of preparing the budget information who is planning on attending, and so that we can set aside that or include that in the budget. and sometimes even though their intention is to participate for one reason or the other, they don't. So that on line 20 includes the amount for, there were 4 employees who anticipated that they might request tuition reimbursement in the upcoming budget.
What's an employee activity, the next line, 25?
The employee activity, it includes our holiday lunch, our service and perfect attendance awards, retirement recognition, department meetings and activities, and I believe that's a certain amount set aside for each department to use for a holiday lunch or so case, and employee birthday recognition, which is a monthly birthday lunch.
So you can look on page 82 to see the
breakout.
Human resource line item detail. And that's under GL number 926450, employee activity expense, to see a breakdown of how that's being budgeted. The retirement recognition, just one is have usually $500, is it $250 per retiree for the department to be able to recognize them and thank them for their service.
Happy to answer any questions you may have.
And provided in the slides that emailed to you that we covered yesterday, there is a slide in there on the healthcare plan changes and cost containment up on the screen here that if you would like to walk through, it just gives kind of, Diane put this together and the things that Plant Board's been proactive in working to keep costs under control. From that chart that we showed yesterday, you can see since 2011 we've maintained a pretty tight range in healthcare costs. So that's just one as a side note for if you want to see that. It's included in those slides. So.
Employee activity jumped from 546 to 15.8. In 2-year period.
What line are you on there? Or
36.
Oh, well, that's probably the retirement.
Employee activity. 25, line 25.
The only activity that we've added really is the birthday recognition, and we did have employee appreciation lunches, and but we did not include those in the budget. We kind of swapped out for a monthly employee birthday recognition just to kind of change things up a bit. And, you know, I think probably retirement recognitions have gone up because we have had quite a few employees retire.
Doc, if you look in the second column, what was budgeted was $17,840, but it looks like Diane is only going to spend $6,842. And next year we're budgeting $15,800, which is below last year's budget.
We started the birthday lunches mid-budget year. We started those in January, so that this doesn't reflect the whole year of that.
Those lunches, I think, are running around $300 a month. So I think she's got budgeted for the birthday lunches is $3,600 a year.
In reading these columns in the various pages on the fiscal year 16-17 estimated year-to-date, is that estimated through the whole year or just
through June, through this month?
You're trying to compare a whole year there.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Trying to get to an estimated June
for the
30th.
That's not just 10 months. Okay.
And we tried our best to find items that with spending occurred later in the fiscal year. So if you did an annualized figure, you might not pick it up. We tried to catch those. There are some that we did not catch that you'll see a large, why haven't we spent this much money? It's like, well, in June there'll be a $50,000 invoice and that will get you to your number. So we did our best. With the software, when we close the month of May, we'll be able to import the May balances. Then you're just, you're annualizing you've got 11 actual months, so we'll be very close with the second version of having more year-to-date balances that are reflective of actual. If there are no questions for Diane, I think we're on to the last victim with IT. So our IT department expense summary is on page 37. And if you're wanting to look at the line item detail to see what is in that, you're looking at pages 84 and 85.
So, starting with payroll, just wanted to note that we're not adding any new staff in this upcoming budget year. We've got a number of subscriptions that we take throughout the year for services, IT services, that and magazines and other technical type subscriptions that we keep to keep our staff up to date. Our continuing education with IT, the classes that we send people to generally run upwards of $5,000 pop, and so the expenditure there can get quite high when we get everybody the training that they need. We're looking to try to send multiple people to training. We didn't get a chance to do a lot of training this past year due to admin building and Carl's retirement, a number of other factors that have been keeping us on our toes this year. So we're hoping to catch that back up this upcoming year. And other than that, we don't really have a whole lot of new additions. On the capital side of things, we're just trying to keep up with our PC refreshes. We try to keep that on about a 5 to 6 year cycle. Same with servers, printers, network equipment. We try to capital. Sorry, it's on 19.
What accounts for the rise in line 40 for software services?
You're on page 37.
Page 37, line 40. And then on.
The increase there is primarily due to the addition. So last budget year, we had a line item for a Secure Works, it's a managed security service, and so that has an ongoing fee associated with it. So it moved out of capital into the ongoing expense. So it was an increase there for that.
So what are we getting for that? Was that $60,000?
Yeah, so they're monitoring traffic that enters and leaves our corporate network, comparing that to their threat database, and helping to alert us to abnormal activity, and making sure that we're not leaking data, or we have some advanced persistent threat, that type of.
What do we have in place before we started using the Secure Works?
Before that, we were just trying to monitor on our own and reviewing logs, semi-regularly, and looking for anything out of the ordinary. But as you know, firewalls can produce tons and tons of logs, and it takes a keen eye to be able to find that. And we felt like our best option was to find a service that had a database of known threats and staff that could monitor that in a real-time type of fashion.
Did we look at any of the options that are out there that have active open databases that have those threat lists in them, or any of the tools that allow you to get a level above all those log entries?
We briefly looked at some of those. They were still sort of an in-house solution. We would have had somebody that could, be able to turn all the knobs and filter out the good data from the bad, and the care and feeding of it. It just appeared to us to be too much to try to work in without adding additional staff.
And does the other line item on that detail page on 84 for the Microsoft services, is that our license fees for the whole company, or do those get parceled out in other budgets and other sections as well? Is that the whole allocation for the?
No, yeah, it'd be for the entire company.
There's no more Microsoft fees anywhere else. That's it.
Yeah.
You looking at Microsoft software for 50,000?
Yeah.
Under 905, 400, about halfway down the page.
Yeah, that's it. The other two items that jump out of there are those Esri licenses we're paying. Are we using all those tools? Have we always had that level of licensing fees with those guys?
As far back as I can remember, yeah, that's what we've been paying every year.
And we're actually using all those tools enough to justify that?
Yeah, as far as the cable and water, electric, I mean, they're using all that extensively to map their plant and keep up with their data.
I see.
Where's that?
It's the third and fourth line on page 84.
It doesn't say Esri, but it's ARC.
Yeah, I'm sorry. ARC FM and ArcGIS.
Thank you. Well, we've gone through all three divisions and the administrative departments. Mr. Chairman, I'll turn over to you and how you would like to move forward. We have a few things that we... Kim!
Kim.
The true last victim.
You had skated.
You just had to speak up, didn't you?
You were out clean.
She didn't realize I was trying to do her a favor.
That's right.
I know. She's the most important one.
Yeah.
Thank you. My budget is pretty cut and dry for the most part. The only thing that I'd like to point out is our continuing education. That most of that is company-wide CPR. We do different trainings and have different people come in and things like that. And then the other out of the ordinary expense is our AEDs. We're having to replace our AEDs, which are we've had the Philips Heart Start AEDs, and they're no longer going to service the model that we had. So we had to, AEDs don't work very well without batteries and pads, so we're not going to be able to get those products anymore. So we're having to replace those, and we're phasing that in. We've started, in fact, we have an AED installed already, one of the new models installed in here. So that's They're about
Where's that?
$1,500 a unit. It's on page 39. And then also,
Line 40.
it's in the 40, line 40.
And you were saying each AED is about $1,500?
About $1,500 with the cases and the extra batteries and things that have to come with that. So
Does every truck have one?
no, we have about 20 units company-wide. 10 of them come out of my budget, then the electric buys their own. So, but we have 20 units company-wide. And we try to place those on crew trucks and things like that. So, try to manage where those go. But really, that's everything else in my budget is pretty stagnant. It stays the same from year to year. So, if there's any questions, thank you.
Yeah, David. We had it from Kathy. Does Kathy have anything?
It's, if y'all would like to hear what Kathy, she's under the administrative department, but we can walk through that. We've got
Can we walk through that?
yeah. So let me. Oh, it's too fine. I don't want to cut you out. So on page 76 is the line item detail for administration. I covered the kind of an overview, but on 76, GL number 930101, public information expense, and that would be the 8 or so items that Kathy's has planned for the year.
Okay, I think the only thing that, there's a couple of things that are new on there. I put in something for crisis communication media training, and that would be for me and some of the management. Talking about maybe bringing somebody in here to talk about how we can better communicate with our customers, especially when, when we have certain situations that happen, and we're in an industry where that happens. We have crisis communications opportunities. So it'd be nice to just get a little training in here to talk about that. There are experts who do that kind of thing all the time, so we've kind of looked at some prices, and that's that. The other thing is the email service, and this is for possibly for the future if we get the opportunity to, as we gather more of our customers' emails. It's an email service that it's just direct contact with our customers rather than just relying on TV, website, social media. This would be a direct contact that we would build with all of our customers. This is just to make announcements on things that we have going on, to announce for public hearings.
Is that kind of like the portal then, or?
A lot like the portal, but you wouldn't necessarily have to be a portal customer to use this service.
Okay.
This is just for really anyone who would want to, sign up to get any information that we provide, things that we have going on, services that we have available. If people don't, know, that we also provide, and I've seen it on TV a lot lately, is our security services, our medical alert services, or really just to let our customers know, again, when we have things going on, so they don't feel like we're not transparent. We want to invite them to things that, like our public hearing yesterday. This would be direct contact so that we know that they are getting the message that we have these things going on. We have services available to them.
And so it's different from Facebook too.
Yeah, because this is direct contact to our customers.
Okay.
Not all of our customers use Facebook.
Right.
This would be a collection of, when they sign up for the portal, they do give their emails, but we have other customers who probably aren't on the portal that have emails that we could be reaching directly.
Mm-hmm.
We'd like them to be on the portal. And if there's, somehow we could, I've talked to Casey a bit about how we could, kind of merge these ideas, and that's something that we're looking at. but.
Just be more proactive in terms of.
Yeah, it's just been, yeah, exactly. And I think just, I don't know, do you have any questions about the other things are just things to get involved in the community, to show that we are a part of the community and have been for a very long time, and that we'd like to be a part of the things that are happening here, so.
Along that proactive communication, have you guys given any thought to starting to get engaged with some of the aggregate services that give you kind of employee-based temperature data based off of social media, so you get some heads up of what the conversation is that as it pertains to Frankfort Plant Board, without having to have somebody manually go out there and
yeah, we're doing the manual thing for sure. I actually have been looking into some different material as far as there is stuff you can use to I've been reading about it, that's whenever you're mentioned in something, it pops up. So I'm still doing research on that, and yeah, that's definitely something that we'd
kind
like to.
Kind of like a clipping
involve.
service on the electronic?
Pardon me?
Kind of like a clipping service, but electronic?
Yeah, but not really. This for social media, yeah, for digital. I mean, even if you're mentioned, not just like in a tweet, but like if you're mentioned anywhere on social media, you're alerted to it. So, similar to that, but.
And some of them can actually give you metadata, so you have some sense of what the weighting of the different.
Right. Yeah.
All I know is my daughter monitors that and calls me every once in a while and says, "Dad, what is it you're doing?" Because they're mad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have that too.
That's right.
So all of these things, again, in my role, is just an effort to show that we are part of this community, trying to be as transparent as possible, engage our customers as much as possible, so that they feel like they're getting good service from us.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
We, I know I've got one item we talked yesterday about that I have data to talk to the board about regarding AMI and the projected savings versus cost outlay. That was one thing, Mr. Chairman, that I feel like that project's hitting a high enough materiality figure that it's worth maybe covering.
Okay, I think we've been over the budget that's presented and so forth, and now I think we enter into what I call the wish list segment, which I asked my members to be restrained, but now we're ready to talk about the type of thing you just mentioned and whatever my colleagues have in mind to discuss about the budget or what they'd like to see in the budget or take out of the budget or whatever. So AMI is a good place to start.
I think what we're looking for, I know that this is a time, being a special meeting, that I don't know if we can take an official vote, but I think the board is able to give staff directives or guidance, I should say, on what to have included in the budget or not.
I think probably from your standpoint, the sooner you know something, the better.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay. And I asked Hans and James, as far as vote, I know it's not a closed session, so of course we're prohibited from voting in closed session, but this is a special meeting. So can we take a vote on an item today?
Well, if it pertains to the budget.
Yeah.
I don't think you can because it was noticed as review.
Okay.
But I think, Hans, you mentioned yesterday, we could talk about it and, like you said, we could give guidance, which would let David have some feeling to bring it, because I think the hope is to vote it on the 20th, right?
I think it
So
certainly
this gives them
is.
the guidance to put something together to have us have it on the 20th.
Yes, we would like, our timeline as it's laid out is to vote on the regular scheduled June 20th board meeting. My only concern is that a member might have something they would like in the budget that there aren't enough votes to approve. And so that whatever is suggested, I don't know how we go about it, but if there's enough consensus there that we put it in so that it would be approved. I don't want something new coming up that might be a no deal deal breaker for somebody else. So that's just the only concern I have. It's just getting a kind of a general consensus that is the direction we'd like to go.
So you need a general consensus of like nodding or grimacing or looking at the floor or...
Yeah, I guess if it's bad enough I really don't want something, I guess we'll probably hear about it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you mentioned AMI, so I guess that's a good place.
Sure, I can go ahead and talk about, we had just a background for those that are watching us, tuning in. I had an AMI consultant look at the different, come in specifically look at the processes of FPB and look at how the advanced metering infrastructure, some called smart meters, would be able to assist and provide additional benefits, and how the cost versus cost savings versus the cash outlay for the service. And I wanted to show a slide put together looking at the projected timeline that this consultant's laid out, and also showing the summary here of cost versus savings estimates. So the very top part of the slide being projected shows the AMI's consultant's timeline that they used in the study. It was a feasibility study, and they've got this sectioned off in calendar years, as we are a fiscal year, so there's a little bit of a timing in the way that we budget versus how this project's laid out. But the estimated at the very bottom of this is a summary of the AMI savings. You can see at the very bottom, very first line in that bottom block, AMI savings. So it's a year-by-year savings amount. The next line is a cumulative savings, adding as you accumulate those savings, what that looks like in total. And then the next two lines below are the cost, cumulative cost, and the very last line is the savings, which would be a positive figure, and then the cost, a negative figure. You can see how the project moves, that in following this timeline, we're start to spend significant funds in calendar 19, then we really ramp it up in 20 and 21, as you can see at the timeline at the top, full implementation begins. Most of the savings, as we discussed, is coming from moving from in-house meter reading to now with this software not needing to have that structure, that we're able to do electronically. So I just wanted to show this information. You can see how it takes a while, really you're at 2022 until you see actual savings in hard dollars versus the cost. I know staff, in talking with the electric department, myself in the finance department, and others that are dealing with this project and have something to comment on the timing of this project, would feel we're in a situation we are taking and counting on savings from the Kentucky Municipal Energy Agency to be able to provide the funds to pay for this. We were looking at this project coming in as there would be a budget neutral item, that we would not increase customer rates to pay for this. We're looking at a little over $10 million when you factor in some of the upfront cost of getting in procurement assistance from consultants in helping us with that planning and requirements of the system. So today, as a member of KYMEA, we are estimating in the budget $5 million a year in savings starting in fiscal year 19-20 through the rest of this 5-year period. I looked over history of our payments to KU and was curious of how does it proportionately throughout the year. You'd be surprised at how even the payments are month to month, even though usage changes. There are some fixed fees, there's some power cost adjustments. So if you look at $5 million, you're looking around $417,000 a month we're looking to save starting in May of 2007, May 2019. So just to give you an idea of the savings start to come in around $417,000 a month. And then we're looking here, you can see the amount of expenditures that would be going out the door. I think if you had the first, you start really kicking in, well, let me say this. I think staff's recommendation is the fact that we are a part of KYMEA. We've signed contracts that we have known prices, but we also have a lot of parts of the portfolio and parts of the organization that have yet to be structured. So at this point, we have an agreement. The rates for KYMEA, for us to see and have an idea of more accurately what those true savings from KYMEA are, will happen in sometime in calendar 2018. So before, if we were to take off on this timeline starting in January of 18, at that point, if the board says we want to do this project, we want to start in January, we start spending funds to figure out what are the planning requirements and the RFP specifications and all that. If you start doing that, you're moving towards, you're essentially saying we are going to do this project. And if we would go down this timeline, you can see here that we really start to hit about mid-18. We've got vendor procurements that's happened as of right at the mid of 2018, so that's got us at June of 2018. You're starting to get to spend money. And with the dollar commitments, you're going to have to sign on the dotted line for a $10 million payment out to some vendor. And I think we would feel more comfortable as staff that we would wait until we have a little more idea of what the savings are going to be to the plat board before we sign a $10 million commitment. So that's just a little summary of the savings versus cost and staff's thought behind it. If the board wants to do something different, that is definitely your, you can do that, but that would be our recommendation.
So those actual costs that we would be pulling forward into 2018, are those costs that would be sufficient enough that we would have to think about borrowing to get that revenue to cover those?
No, you're looking around 2.5 million.
So
I think we could bridge the gap between when the savings occur. Plus, we have reserves that we could draw down on.
And then we're balancing that risk against, I can't read those numbers from this far, but it's like 1.5 million is the high water mark of the savings. So we're foregoing $1.5 million basically by pushing it out a year.
The savings, if you pushed it out a year, the first year savings is showing at just under 154,000.
Right, but I guess my point being is that the time that the maximum we would be leaving on the table would be the maximum amount. The first year we don't collect the maximum amount of savings, and that's that 1.5 million. It's just talking round numbers. So that's what we're really balancing that risk against, right? Is just we're walking away from $1.5 million to not pull this project forward, right? Does that make sense? It doesn't look like it makes sense.
I don't see it that way.
Yeah.
We're pushing, you can just slide the schedule out 1 year. And so everything now, instead of 19 on the bottom here is 20.
But I guess my point being is that we will never get back that year of savings.
The 154,000?
Any of those years of savings, right? So but the year we don't implement is a year that we don't get any savings from that year, right?
No, I think we're looking at a quantifiable savings amount. it's all estimated, but
right. But the time is gone, and we didn't save money over that time. It's no different than having a storefront and you're closed that day. It doesn't matter if you're open the next day and generating revenue. You didn't generate revenue the day you were closed. It's the same type of thing here, right? We're letting those savings sit out in the future, and we could do them earlier, so we could realize those savings sooner. So ultimately, there's more savings there.
I think the savings amount stays the same. You're talking timing.
Exactly. Yeah. But
Well,
because
we're
of the
not
timing,
losing savings. We're
sure you are.
shifting.
You're not getting the savings.
Right.
Because it's a
getting
year
it.
we didn't get the savings. It's a year we spent more money.
So I don't think you lose savings. You're changing the timing of the savings.
Sure you
Well,
lose them.
but the savings is that you don't have those employees, right? So you're not paying that payroll, that time frame. So that is a savings
That's
if
a year
you're not
longer.
spending it.
That's a year longer we're paying those salaries.
I think, I think at this point it'd be a board decision if you want to change from our recommendation. We've looked at this and we feel more comfortable. I know I wouldn't want to go out and make a large personal commitment until I knew I had the revenue to pay for it. And we're asking for another year to know more what those savings might be for savings.
I guess my feeling is I'm 100% for the AMI. But my biggest concern is I want to make sure we hold the customers harmless, and I really don't want to dip into reserves to advance the cash.
Well, one other thing,
Yeah, I just think building those reserves till we have a point, like we talked yesterday, the sooner we can build the reserves above the minimum levels recommended, then I think that discussion, not for this board, not for this budget, but we then have the option to actually start accelerating some debt payments, which will also generate some savings. If we can pay some debts off earlier.
Do we think that's an equivalent? Do we think that's approaching the $1.5 million?
I disagree with the $1.5 million. We're shifting the savings. We're not realizing more savings by doing it sooner.
I think we are, because we're not paying salaries sooner, right?
Let me add one thing I think is the real key issue. I see what you're saying about the savings.
Yeah.
I think one of the key things to keep in mind is and he mentioned it, David mentioned it, the procurement. This is what the consultant originally said. Again, we're projecting backing it up.
Mm-hmm.
But the procurement to me is your real key, not so much your expenditures, because once you do this procurement, you've signed on the dotted line for $10 million.
Sure.
At this point, we don't know what KYMEA for sure is going to have. We won't until sometime in late 2018 get our rate sheet from KYMEA. Then we'll know. That was a big concern with backing it up. Once we sign on the dotted line here, I've got a rate sheet. In fact, I'm probably starting to get my money from them, and then I know for sure what my rates are gonna be, and I know for sure what my savings are. That was the big concern from, especially my standpoint, was when you sign a $10 million contract, the money's kind of in the bank, so to speak. Much more than if you did that today, or excuse me, in 2018, you're still hoping. If it doesn't pan out exactly right on that rate sheet, you've already signed a $10 million contract. Now we're gonna have to go borrow the money for it. Now we're gonna have to.
I mean, I guess I understand the concern there, but I guess in my mind, you know, at the end of the day, our costs and our savings are dictated more by, you know, the MISO market costs, and we can see those curves in the past and have some sense of what those are in the future. The only variable there is if there's some onerous administrative or extra add-on fee or some contractual change that sends us really far south with KYMEA. And do you think that's a real risk?
I agree. I think the KYME savings there's an excellent chance they're going to happen. It really comes down, in my opinion, to savings that you're speaking about versus the risk of something not turning out. And
yeah.
Whatever the board's comfortable with, you know, I believe KYMEA is going to be great, but you know, that's a personal belief. I can't show you on a piece of paper guaranteed here's your rate,
right?
And that's a concern. We just want the board to make sure they understand those risks. You'll sign a contract without something to hard dollars back it up.
Right.
If you move it forward according to this one.
Well, aren't there some other advantages that the consultants talked about having after-hour phone banks to keep track of where somebody's power goes out, and that once we start having AMI, there's more savings than just those salaries? And
those are soft savings, soft benefits, and we were just looking at committing ourselves to a $10 million project and telling our customers we are working to not impact your rates. If something were to go south, if something were to go different than we expect, and I come back to the board and say, we've had an issue, we've committed to a $10 million contract, we don't see the savings for whatever reason, or it's less than we thought, we need to spend down reserves and we need to borrow money, you know, that's not a meeting I'd like to have.
Yeah. But I guess in my mind, even if something catastrophic happens and KYMEA folds up, we can still go out and negotiate transmission and buy on the MISO market directly and have even greater savings than we have with KYMEA.
So I think it's...
Yeah, but if that happened in that time frame, your only hope would be to try to go to the market, and you would be in such a constrained market that you might be okay with the market, but...
Yeah. Well, the market prices are the market prices.
We would be at absolute mercy.
The capacity would be a different discussion, but the actual energy cost that's the market, right? Which is more than likely what we're going to be which is, in all hope, what we're going to be relying on as KYMEA moves forward.
But if KYMEA fell apart and you had to do that, you would be operating under just a couple of months window, and you would be at the mercy of everyone. You would really be under the gun. I don't think you would realize those kind of savings.
But again,
that tight.
That was kind of my outside crazy if something catastrophic happened. So
yeah, I mean we're just trying to make sure that you understand that if you know our concern, David and I especially, our concern is signing that check before there's really, really good assurances that.
Well, I think that should be the concern of the board too.
So help me understand the actual revenue impacts of it more. I mean, if we pull this forward, I mean, we designed this initially with the thought that it would happen at this time frame. So we must have felt like when we worked through this process with the consultants and built a business case that this time frame worked. So help me understand what those revenue impacts look like prior to the reduction in our power costs from the move away from KU. I mean, are those eating into the reserves? Are our reserves still building the way we expect them to be? You know, how big of an impact do you expect that to be in the budget?
That was a lot right there. Can you go back?
I guess the short of it is if how do we pay for this prior to 2019? Where does that money come from? Does it affect our reserves? How big of an impact is it having those spendings for getting the procurement process going and getting whatever initial costs we have prior to May 1st, 2019? What's that impact look like?
I put this together, and it's a little busy, but it's trying to come up and show the difference between, let's look at the blue line, projected KYME wholesale power savings. This is per the budget. This is a conservative assumption. The orange line, staff recommended AMI project cost outlay. This is assuming we start January 1 of 19. You can see at the bottom the start of the project, 18-19.
You might be able to see at the bottom. I'm too old.
Oh, that's okay. The consultant AMI project cash outlay starting in, January 1 of 18. And then at the bottom is the difference. The yellow line is the difference between the two. And looking at it, it's hard to gather. I found the numbers at the bottom to be more helpful. If you look at the very last line, the difference between what the consultant timeline was and what staff's recommendation is, it's about $2.5 million. And I think there's sufficient reserves to be able to get us through that time.
And that's $2.5 million over a single calendar year.
That's over 3 fiscal years.
Oh, 3 fiscal years.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the concern is not getting to that. I think we could front it. We could do the timeline with cash reserves. But I think it's the total overall $10 million commitment.
So, and where in that time frame is the end of the procurement process where we'd actually have to sign on the dotted line?
That was, I think that was right in mid-18.
Okay.
So we've got this looking at, I think it is the AMI vendor procurement is the first 2 quarters of calendar 18. You're looking at ramp up and integration starting at the end of calendar 18.
I mean, you would sign the dotted line at the end of the light blue box.
So you're looking at July 1st, a year from now, you would be signing a $10 million commitment. And
well, so Vent, what are your big concerns out there about what could go south with our power supply that makes that money go away?
I don't think it will go away. I don't have a concern that it absolutely is going to go away. My concern would be to come to this board and say, I want you to spend $10 million, and I don't have a rate sheet from a brand new organization
right.
yet. In late 18, we'll have a rate sheet. Our forecast that we do from a year-to-year basis on what our costs for energy, et cetera, are really close every year. I will have a rate sheet to apply to that. I will be able to tell you what our cost is going to be to anything anyone would estimate. As accurate as you could do, I would be able to tell you, I think our energy costs are going to be this. We're collecting this much in revenue, therefore, here's what you have.
Okay. So I guess what I'm hearing there is that we've got a decision time point in mid-18, and we're going to have the final data to make that decision towards late 18.
Late 18, yes, sir.
So 2 questions. 1, when's the preliminary rate sheet available? And 2, can we get them to pull that rate sheet up to coincide with when we have to make that decision?
I don't think there is a preliminary rate sheet. That's when the rate sheet would be produced.
Or can we at least get them to give us the calculation so we have some sense of what's in the rate?
Possibly. I mean, you might be able to move it forward a month or 2, maybe, but one of the things, they're still trying to procure either renewables or the natural gas and some of those things that are going on currently with the portfolio. Those things aren't all in place. I don't know. I guess, it's one of those things. It's risk versus the savings that you're speaking of. It's the staff, we can do anything. We can implement it today. Yeah. One of the first things I think we were talking about was, they thought it could be done this or you wouldn't have produced it. We really didn't know when the timeline on things would hit and we had an idea of what the cost was going to be. We just told them to put it together as soon as possible, and then if the numbers or things land in different places, we'll back it out. And that's where we came back with, hey, maybe backing it up 1 more year would be the most prudent thing with a $10 million expenditure, or contract. Again, we can do either one. We can absolutely make it happen. It's just whatever the board's comfortable with. Do they want to sign a contract without an absolute? I guess there's nothing absolute in the world.
Yeah. It seems to me. I guess where I am with it is that it seems like we're leaving money on the table the longer we wait to start.
Sure.
And we have some good indications of where those rates are going to go. We have, hopefully some ability to pressure to get some final data on what those rates are before we have to make that decision. And if worst case comes and we see something that before that procurement cycle starts, we can stop.
David,
so I say we march on until we see some reason to tell us not.
How would this affect our reserves?
Well, if we started a year early, if we started in January of 18, compared to pushing it back a year, you're looking at $2.5 million
over the course of 3 years. So not a huge impact.
We won't see the first savings from KYMEA until It'll be June of 2019.
We required to have 3 months.
That is our goal internally, is to have 3 months of operating reserves, in the bank. If something were to happen, if we were to have a F5 come through the middle of town, that we'd be able to continue to operate.
Is there a requirement, is there a state requirement or for us to have 3 months?
There's language, reserve language. It's use of surplus language in the Kentucky Revised Statutes, and it walks through a pretty step-by-step process of things you should shoot for. So there is reserve language in there. It doesn't specifically mention 90 days, but it does lay out some steps and guidelines, or at least a structure of how you need to be moving through.
And we're only, what, 30 days?
No, we're close. We're close to around 100 now. We'd like to be.
Okay.
But I went through this, I think, back in March. We walked through the cash flow cycle of, you're sitting at any given time, you've got 100 days reserves, but by the time you make $4.5 million KU payment, you pay NCTC for programming, and you're going down the line.
That double payment lands in that 19 time period too, where you have, we do have quite a bit of that, but what was it, $1 million something? Almost $2 million.
The KU tail and the accelerated Kimi.
Yeah, that would land. That would land in the middle of 2019. There.
I think the biggest argument on reserves is clearly the unwritten rule, and that's what the bond agencies like to see, because that affects the more you got there, the more they feel warm and fuzzy about loaning you money.
Sure, impacts your cost of capital.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're looking at $2.5 million over 3 years, it's like $830,000 a year.
Once again, I don't think we've laid out the concerns we have, and if the board wants to make a different determination, but those are the main issues we have. If the board's comfortable with committing to that project before having us a little more definitive estimate of cost savings, then that's the board's privy, and we'll walk down that line.
I mean, I guess what I've heard is that we can certainly roll out, and we can absorb all the costs easily of rolling it out.
Yes.
And there's more saving, there's more benefit to our customers by pulling it forward potentially. The risk is, do we commit before we have that month or two lag to know what the exact rates are? And I guess my thought is, we try to pull that forward. We go ahead and move as if we're going to move forward. If we hear something that's insane before we pull the trigger on the $10 million mid-18, we have a chance to not do something crazy.
Because in that scenario, though, you're talking about putting money into the project and willing to walk away from the money put down.
Yeah, right. And I agree. That's our ultimate risk on the table, but the reward is pulling that money forward for the customers.
Because if you do that, then the reward for the customers goes away.
Well,
it's minimized.
Well, I don't know that we're saying that we would never do AMI. We would just look for other options to do it. Right. We're not saying that AMI is suddenly a bad business case. It's still something we would pursue. We would just have to look at other means to do it, right? So it's not necessarily that it's the wrong thing.
Will we issue that, or
we would do a rate impact, or look at other things, or there'd be some other discussion there, right? But I guess in my mind, we have a chance to move forward with this with some prudence and being able to balance what risk is out there. I'm comfortable with what we're able to get off of MISO versus KU. There's a significant delta there. We have the ability to have some heads up with where those rates are going before committing to the over and being able to change course if we need to. So not pulling those savings forward, or pulling those savings forward, seems like a better way to go to me.
James, what would a jury do with this one? I don't know. Obviously, there's a difference of viewpoints here among the board members, and all very serious, and all my colleagues are very serious about it. But I detect I don't think there's a consensus, put it that way, of the board to accelerate. And when I hear staff making its recommendations, staff's responsible, and I'm inclined to go with staff. But I don't see a clear consensus of the board to accelerate. I realize you can't take votes. I'm told
this one, maybe we want a line item and just have on the 20th for an in or out vote.
If we could provide what the budget looks like with the two different timelines, once again, we're assuming the savings occur at a certain time, and that's kind of the issue, is having, it's more of, do we think they'll be there? We have a more than likely opinion. It's just that.
Sure, I understand, yeah. And that would also, if we wait till the 20th and we leave it as a line item in or out, that would give us some time to get some feedback from KYMEA if they could get us those rates prior to where we'd have to make that decision.
And KYMEA is not entirely in the bag yet. I mean, you could still have an unexpected turn of events that turns things upside down. We're still almost 2 years out now from the handoff.
I mean, you'd have to, I mean, the only thing I can think of is you'd have to have, and some of our providers would have to fold between now and then, would be the.
It would be catastrophic.
Yeah, it would, and, you know.
Well, so where are we? How are we going to handle this? We'd like to make a budget vote on the 20th of June is what we'd like to do. And
I mean, what do you think? Just a line item on the 20th that we can vote on independently?
Well, one thing I talked to David just real briefly about before we started today, and I hate to hold up the state budget process as a model to use, because certainly it's not the model for the nation. But you can pass a budget, and I've done it in some other organizations I've been involved with, to actually have the budget and then have some budget language that basically includes some language to do some things. And like we talked before, we don't want to pass a budget and then be in there amending it in July. But we can pass a budget with the idea, and there's a couple things, I made some notes of last night after, yesterday, that I think probably are going to probably need to come back and revisit September. I mean, based on some things, I think there's some things we talked about yesterday on some of the cable stuff, some other things that we got that study coming. We're going to want to see some more data, and it's possible we're going to want to relook at some things. I think that's certainly the possibility. So, I mean, I think we could do some budget language on something that basically adopts the plan as presented, and it gives us the ability that. So right now, when do you, under what you've got right now, our event, if we accelerate it, when would we pull the trigger? If we accelerate the timeline, when would we pull the trigger?
If you accelerate the timeline, starting in quarter 1 of 2018 is when we would start the actual.
And if we don't accelerate,
year 18.
and so if you don't accelerate, you pull the trigger when?
Quarter 1 of 2019.
So
and again, these are preliminary study stuff. You're starting to write the RFP and those kind of things.
So if in October of this year, first day, second quarter of this fiscal year, we came back and looked at it and got a better feel from Kiwi on where things were, we could decide then to pull the trigger on January 1 if things were looking good. If things were still enough that we had some concerns, we could stick with the time frame we're looking at right now, right?
Correct.
I mean, how much lead time do you need to pull the trigger?
Well, here's another thing to think.
Yeah.
Even if you do the project planning and the AMI, put together all those kind of things, that's not lost data even if you decided at that point, hey, let's back it up another year. Then you're going to use the same information you've already done. You're not going to lose anything.
So we'd have a few more months after January.
The point is signing that vendor procurement. Everything else we could do, if you wanted to move it forward, we could do that without any problem. And if you decided later on in that year, nope, let's back it up, we don't want it.
So you could do the procurement with a guarantee that they hold their prices constant for X period?
No, I wouldn't.
How long would they guarantee their prices if you went through the procurement? You're not going to hold them for a year.
No, probably not. Usually 180 days is the most.
So they'd hold them for 6 months?
I think that's the most we ever.
Well, I think what Vent was saying is we could do all the work and have it ready and then make that decision, then use that work for the next year.
So we'd have a little bit
later.
more than the January 1st date. We'd have another month or two after that for that initial planning, and
Right.
there wouldn't be any loss there at all.
Right, it'd be work that we could save and reinstate.
I'd say, Mr. Chairman, Ralph,
I'm listening.
pulling your ear.
I'm listening.
I mean, I think basically that for June 20th to put the language in there that we do some preliminary work, but do we make a go or no go to advance or not by October 1? That gives us 3 more months to see where Kiwi's going for Vint to do some more research, and then we still got 3 months before we'd have to make a decision to go for January 1 if we want to go faster.
Well, we could still go in January 1 and have, 60 days, 90 days of work that we wouldn't be losing. So would that October date be right, or would we say?
Yeah, when you think you might have it a preliminary by the end of the year?
The earliest they'll be able to do it would maybe be quarter 2 of 18, because they've got it happening late quarter 3, I think.
And I think we're gonna need some information, how long you think a rate guarantee or a price guarantee might be if you did an RFP. There's no use to put a bid out and do all that work and have them guarantee it for 90 days and not be ready to go and have to rebid.
But I guess what I heard from Vin is that we don't necessarily have to get into the bid process. We can still do a few months of work and not have wasted anything, and that gets us into the second quarter of 18, third quarter fiscal, before we have to make a go no go decision, right?
Because I mean, I tend to come down on the conservative side. Of course, all my money's in FDIC stuff, so I take no risk. So, but I tend to be very conservative.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, and I want to be as well. But it seems to me we've got a path that we can move with no risk and make a decision at that point whether what we think that is.
Whether to launch or not.
Right. And but the other side of that, it's not just risk; it's the benefit of pulling those savings forward. And you know, it's $1 million in something, whatever that curve looks like, right?
And I mean, I agree. There's some potential lost savings that can't be recovered, but I think there's some other offsetting things depending on debt acceleration that could offset that sum. But that's a lot of math. And a lot of variables in there. And with this type of approach, Mr. Dent, could you sleep at night?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think another aspect is the advantage for rate payers to have AMI. And so there's some other benefits that are harder to quantify, which would encourage us to move forward.
But they're not demanding it right now, so I mean, it's not like they're clamoring for.
They don't know how great.
They don't know.
No, that's right. Yeah,
they don't know all the benefits.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
But it sounds like we have a way we can move forward with no risk and make a decision when it comes to the point we have to make a decision.
And not make a decision today or in this budget to launch on a particular date.
Yeah. Well, we launched the initial work.
And then, but not as far as putting it on the street and bid, right?
In that process is the go no go for the bid. Yeah.
So you're thinking October 1 is a day? That seems kind of early.
Well, it sounds like we've got a little more time than that based on being able to wait until. So we're talking. You know, we have to make a go no go by second quarter in 18. So, you know, we would be wanting to revisit it in the first quarter of 18 sometime and decide what we're going to do.
As I get it right, all we're kind of semi-agreeing to today prior to the 20th is we want Vint and David and them to get stuff ready to go without us actually putting something on the street and make a decision to go.
Right. Everything up to the procurement.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with revisit first quarter of 218.
Yeah. And I think that's where we are.
Yeah.
So I guess what you're saying is move it up to the 18 time frame, but bring it back to us before we put it out on the street.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
And see what we have. And in the meantime, we'll work on the KYMEA.
And see how warm and fuzzy you feel.
Right.
Yeah.
Have we made it bad enough for you that you can still do it? I mean, are we asking something that's too difficult for you to do? I mean, y'all work wonders, I know that.
Yeah.
So we're saying move the whole project to that time frame that was up there.
Yeah, we're moving it up with the go no go before we actually put the procurement out.
Maybe.
This is a little conversation. I'm just curious, the consultants used for the AMI project, was it thought that we would continue them on with the process? Okay.
I mean,
so there might be some cost there.
We had really good success with them. I was very impressed.
Yeah,
with
they
them.
did a good job.
And I think
I agree.
I think it would be good to use.
Have we given you enough direction that you can live within that proposed with your work you have to do?
I believe we're all on the same page and we can move through that.
Okay.
And as far as informing ratepayers, do we have the presentation on AMI by the consultants? Is that on our website?
The first one was on our website, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and then as we move forward with this process now, you know, education materials, those kind of things are all part of what they would help us develop going forward as part of the whole project. So those kind of things would get, of course, added to websites and community meetings, etc.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
But that's all part of kind of those pre-things that were up there in those first color blocks.
Okay.
So we spent some time on this, but it's an important subject, major subject. So, next subject, members, talking about the budget.
Well, one thing I was thinking about that we didn't get to yesterday, I guess it wasn't really in there, was energy efficiency for ratepayers. It's something we've talked about, looked at different programs, different ideas. That's still something that I think is important, especially when we look at conserving energy and getting better prices, that we should make it go as far as we can. So doing a test program with energy efficiency, or doing some step toward that. We could,
I think I'll leave that to a discussion amongst the board. We don't have that in the budget.
sure.
We've, as staff, have not focused on that as a strategy in this budget. And so if that's something the board would like, I think we can
Okay.
certainly put it in there, but we just have not proposed that as our first draft to you.
Okay. Well, one thing that was presented from MESA was to do a limited program and see how we like it. And I don't remember the cost of that. I think
It was
like
it was
80,000.
154,500 to a range of to 94,500 for startup, depending on what
Okay.
parts and pieces of the module you took off on.
And Mason, in my, just be kind of, they brought us an idea informally that we might be able to capture the money for the first year with some money they could repurpose.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to agree to it by a very tight timeline. And they delivered the product very, very late. And it was a deal that was far beyond anything we had ever even considered. And it just lapsed. I mean, it was, I was under the impression they had something that the board could consider within the range of what we talked about, but it was a far broader, different program than anything it had industrial, it just was, they brought it in good faith. And yeah, they were covering the first year, but then they had an escalator like the second year, didn't they, Dave, to like 250,000?
It was making a lot of assumptions. It was making a lot of assumptions. It was putting out a proposal to a state agency that was making a lot of determinations or stating, here's what we're planning to do, when our board had not come close to getting past, should we even do it or not.
Or give them any input on exactly what pieces we'd like to see in the plan. They had made a bunch of assumptions.
So it was tight timeline, and we just have not, like I say, included that as a part of this plan, but if the board like to see that.
Well, a wonderful way to move forward is, I agree we don't have anything concrete we can sink our teeth in, but we do have that 150 number out there. Maybe we put a number in the budget as a placeholder and then have a to-do to come up with programs to address efficiency during the year.
I'll just be honest, I'd need a lot of convincing to go with him.
What I was saying is what I'm saying is not that we go with MESA, that we just use that because we've got a number.
Yeah.
And then we look at whatever program we look at to address efficiency over the course of the year. But that gives us a line item. And whether that number is 100, 150, 200, whatever it is, with lack of better information today to target that number better, let's pick a number and set a goal for the year to define some energy efficiency programs for our customers.
To come up with the program, we would need to find, like I say, the board want to come up with its terms and conditions.
Sure.
Have a public hearing just like we usually do.
Yeah.
Put those
Absolutely.
Those terms in the tariff, and then you go from there.
Yeah, I guess my thought with the line item would be more of an earmark of intent, more than any commitment to actually spend the money. That we would then have the intent to go out and define an efficiency program, whatever it is, whether it's something like MESA or whether it's Energy Star appliance rebates, whatever, just an open field for addressing energy efficiency.
And you could adopt whatever programs you like.
Right.
I'd almost rather see for year one, it's just my thinking, and it's not something we can really discuss here in open thing, but there's some matters going on in some contracts, that if we had some one-time money, I think we might possibly need a little more cash for the reservoir, depending on what actions we take later. We want to do the sidewalk project out here that we're going to discuss at a later date. And that'd be based on what you told me, David. We don't collect much from our checkoff, and put a little bit of cash in our energy assistance to help people with their bills this first year, that we know we could earmark right here in Frankfort for the elderly or for people with young families with young children or whatever. Because I just don't want to spend a bunch of money for overhead and our administrative costs and send it out to the county. Something about that I don't know, I can't get my head around it.
You lost me with that last part. What's the administrative part?
Well, a lot of this cost that Mason was showing was administrative cost of setting stuff up, and I just can't.
But I guess my thought is that, Mason may not be the right direction to go, right? But my thought is just to have, frankly, I think we do both. I think absolutely we contribute to the assistance program, but Also, you know, efficiency is a different direction.
Mhm.
It's also to the benefit of our customers,
Mhm.
but maybe to the same demographic, but it's ultimately a benefit to everybody. And not to earmark the monies for any particular program, but just to have a line item to demonstrate intent to work towards efficiency through the year.
So which, would it go under administration, or how would we designate someone to work on it?
Could I add a
Sure,
little bit of
please.
input? If I was going to try to tackle energy efficiency issues, the one thing I wouldn't do is come at it from a piecemeal. How about this plan? How about this item? How about this item? APPA, the American Public Power Association, has a full website on all these energy efficiency things that all these different utilities have tried. I mean, it goes into the hundreds and hundreds. It's a subject that gets so big and so broad, it gets very difficult to get your head around unless you're truly an expert. I mean, all of us read things and we, hey, this might work, this might work. If I had to tackle it, the way I honestly would do it is very much the way we tackled the AMI situation. When they came back, we did a business case, so to speak, but it looked at the technologies and what's out there. They came back, we have a presentation, everything that's been done in depth, and everyone feels comfortable with benefits or not. If I was going to try to do energy efficiency, I would get a consultant that is an expert in the field of the holistic, looking at everything and how you quantify what's a success and what the goals and drivers are. I would step back from 30,000 feet, and I would get that and develop a plan. And for Frankfort, the Frankfort Plant Board does. I would start at it from there. To me, that money that you would spend on that, very much like we did on the AMI consultant, would give you a full plan to work going forward, rather than this and that. I mean, we've tried some things in the past, and yeah, it kind of worked or kind of whatever, but it's very hard to say, I'm going to quantify this as a success or not unless you set up front what makes this a success. To me, I would go back and do that. I would get someone, the hard part would be finding a company that really has done exactly what we're talking about, that's in a utility scale type things. Absolutely, there's plenty out there though. I would get that together, work a plan. Yeah, it would take a budget year to do that, but then you would have buy-in from either, there's some people that are going to buy into it no matter what it says. There's some people that are going to be, skeptics. Mm-hmm. To me, if you work a plan and you include a far-ranging many-year plan, like a lot of the utilities in Vermont have done. The one I'm thinking of came out of the utilities in Vermont, and they do that on a utility scale. They do one for AEP up in Ohio, for instance. That kind of situation, it gives you something I think you can hang your hat on and show real goals, and it lets you pick and choose what you want to do, and it shows what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And you have the ability to throw in everything in the pot that everybody thinks of. But once that's decided a year later or whatever that would be, then I think you have a plan to work, and everyone's moving forward in one particular goal. And up until this point, it's kind of, just to be honest, it's coming from everywhere, and we just kind of spiral.
Well, you got the Community Action Agency in Kentucky, which gets millions and millions of federal funds to do weatherization and home improvements. And to be honest, I have no idea how effective they are. Right. Or I mean, there's the Bluegrass here has money. What they're doing, how they're handling things, how they're measuring the data. Yeah. But they're out there. But every community action agency gets that money, passes through the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and they're getting a lot of money for that and for the LIHEAP program, to pay energy bills. And that's one of the things, Dave and I talked briefly. I don't know what impact we have, how many people are getting cut off because they can't pay, who would need assistance, what that is, how much we're getting from LIHEAP. Of course, people have to be proactive and go up and sign up. And if they don't sign up by a certain date, they don't get any help that year. I don't know how many of our residents are falling out of that, program. I know LG&E and KU really marketed heavy because that's direct money back to them. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're signing people up, they're getting that commitment payment, and that's going directly into their bottom line. So, I don't know how that's working out for us. Mm-hmm. How much LIHEAP money we're getting, or
I'm not aware of any.
Yeah. But I think to me there are two different subjects: the LIHEAP and the energy efficiency. And I'm 100% on the same page with where Vin is.
LIHEAP's also weatherization.
I understand. Yeah. But so I mean, my thought would be, Vin, if we could get some projection together to have a number in the budget to look at pursuing something like that for this year, that would be the way I would want to go.
Well, if you remember, I had a $500,000 mistake in the budget.
Perfect.
So it wouldn't. What I'm getting at is it wouldn't scratch the surface of that amount of money,
Right,
obviously.
yeah.
But in the budget we currently have, we over budgeted by 500,000 from what you saw the bottom line on. So we can correct a mistake if you wanted to put. I mean, I don't know what that cost would be, you know, and I may not have a good number, but if you wanted to leave 100,000 back in it or something, that certainly I would think would cover it.
Well, what did the AMI consultant cost, roughly? I mean, it would be less than that, I would think. But.
It's 50, 55, something like that.
What was it?
It's around the 50,000 range.
Was it? Okay.
I would think for less than 50. I mean, there's a lot of state governments that have done all the work with utilities and with everything else that are out there.
I think it'll be more than 55 because it's so
Right.
it's so big. It's way bigger than AMI
Yeah,
as far as AMI are a few vendors and there's a lot of options. This has even more options, more vendors.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we could correct the budget, leave 100 in there for that, and then in the next couple of months we can start that as the number. In the next couple of months we'll find out. We'll do procurement for a firm, and if it comes back different, my opinion would be, you know, we can do a budget amendment or something. But I don't think it'll be over that amount.
I mean, I suggest the other way, not put a budget number in there, let it drop to the bottom line, and then if we have to move money back up,
Okay.
because I don't like to talk a contract amount in a meeting like this.
Yeah.
It makes it awful easy for a vendor to bid.
Absolutely.
I heard they have 50,000 in the budget. Well, I'm thinking I'm coming in about 51. I mean, you don't want to telegraph what you got. I mean,
Sure.
it's like going in and somebody saying, how much car can you afford? Well, how much car payment you want? I mean, it's not the way you buy stuff.
I think it's worth mentioning too that we've talked about this in KYMEA, that this is a project or type of a project to be scaled across all members. I know we just talked, OMU is looking at this type of thing as well. So there is possibility to partner and be able to have some cost sharing in this.
And they'll be here next week.
With the benefits that could stretch across to everyone. So it's just another thought on the way to go too, of not taking it all on our own, but having a project that could be spread across not just our organization, but
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things we were waiting for in the electric department. That was one of the advantages for KYMEA is we were going to, when KYMEA got up and running, then one of the first things they were going to do was go back and look from a complete, all the utilities involved, come up with efficiency programs, marketing, those kind of things, and everybody would pay their piece. You know, if no board, I have my choice. That's the way I would do it because I think it is safe.
Kentucky Home Performance came in. I don't know if you were on board or not.
I think
Kentucky Home Performance came in and made a very impressive presentation to us about what's available and efficiency program.
they are no more, though. I
They're
think
not?
as a group,
Okay.
they're gone.
I mean, I really think the best way to go is to take a holistic approach and have a consultant come in and give us a pitch.
Okay.
I'm not particularly hung up on having a budget placeholder for it. Either way is fine with me, as long as we have some kind of a commitment, however we do that we pursue that and move forward with it this calendar year.
And tell Terry
This
and
budget year.
Herbie bring his check next week.
Bring check.
Bring a check, yeah.
Okay, well, I have a little bit of concern in that area, in that if it's not in the budget, then it gets kind of blown off. So however we can get to a commitment to
Well, that's what I'm
do something.
suggesting on a lot of these things, that we're not necessarily, that when we adopt the budget, we actually adopt the language or provisions we're talking about as part of adopting that final budget.
Okay.
And I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Just an amendment TBD,
Mhm.
but the intent is in the budget. I think that's a good path.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's something like that. If you're telling us that that's the intent and there's no money in the budget, then we will write the RFP, select a firm, and then we'd have to come back to the board, obviously, to have approval, and then you would
Sure.
decide whether you're going to put money in it, and you would see what a contract amount would be.
I think that sounds like a good path
Okay.
forward.
Okay.
Okay, next subject, members.
Oh. Well, I'm not sure how this fits in exactly, but one of the things we talked about yesterday was utilization of space, and the NAC building is sitting there empty. Cable Telecom is meeting in Myrtle and then proceeding up to the head end area. And just utilization of space, and then there's a lot of space here. Do we have any way of grasping that and figuring out how to work out a best use of what we have?
On my list here that I've
Oh,
got.
did I jump in ahead of you?
No, I was
Oh.
just gonna suggest that we put language in that basically, that by September 1st, we come back with a business plan based on what Walt was talking about yesterday, Casey, with the co-location, to see what the options and what the future and best use of the NOC building is.
Well, the knock, and in perspective of, it sounds like there's congestion on Myrtle Avenue, moving some people here, or trying to figure out best utilization of space overall, including the knock. So I don't know how we include that,
Yeah.
but that's one thing that I think came out of the discussion yesterday.
And I think we put a definitive time frame on that we'd like to report back by a date certain.
Well, I think September is pushing us a little bit. We're gonna try to move customer service at the end of this month. We're gonna spend July clearing out of the downtown office. And you're wanting a business plan on co-location and a business plan on space. We need a little more time. I think September's maybe pushing us a little bit.
Sweater weather, or what do you think's a good? What do you feel warm about as a date?
The end of the year, at least.
Well, maybe it's such a big thing, we should visit it in phases. I don't know if that works, but it's just another way of looking at it.
I think staff is really, at this point, struggling with trying to get in this building and get all the systems up and working. And we just need a few months to just try to get in here and get settled down.
So you think the December board meeting, is that?
I guess my thought would be maybe October, and then if that becomes a hardship, we can talk about it as that date approaches.
We talked about it in October. Like I said, I don't want to put undue stress upon the staff. They're already stressed to the limit. It's something we can certainly continue to explore, and I'm sure it'll be on the minds of staff in the meantime. They'll be thinking about alternatives. They'll come to us with something, start to make some suggestions to us.
At a minimum, a progress report of where we're at.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've
Pretty
got
important
one.
when you get get a function installed in a location. It's not always so easy to move it later, shuffle them around. What we like to do fairly permanent basis.
Yeah. And I think it was a discussion yesterday we had. I know Walt, you and Case were, but I don't think, and I wasn't here when we originally talked about this building, but I don't think it was probably ever the intent to end up with 3 data centers.
Right.
Was it here, the head in and the knock?
Telecom has always told me that the NOC building is like a node, a hub, and that it would be very costly, and they're just not real sure how they would go about trying to get some of their infrastructure out of the NOC. So it was never the intent to immediately try to pull telecom out of the NOC building. Casey indicated yesterday that they were, in fact, going to pull their servers over here, but they haven't done so yet. But I knew Telecom has been telling me it's, they've got infrastructure up there that they're not sure how they would take out of there.
Because I think, and I think the thing Walt was talking about yesterday, the co-location, so, I mean, there's all kinds of options there to explore. And I don't know how we best go about that, but I think we probably ought to get a handle on our resources and capacity, and if there's other uses that we generate money out of, part of the NOC or revenue there or wherever it's at.
Also, if you recall, also recommended that we consider getting a consultant to help us figure that, that space out if we could really try to turn it into a co-location. We haven't really set aside any funds for determining, that, so.
Yeah, and I think it's also important that we consider all of our spaces. I'm nowhere near saying that we're not going to consider the head-in building and not going to consider the NOC as well. I think we've got all that space, we've got all that capability. We need to consider all of it.
What kind of money are we talking about to get somebody to help us walk through that process and see what we might have?
Again, I'm not sure at all.
Yeah.
Start there and then I guess come back and ask for more. Can't find anything that looks like it would come in under that. I just, this is something completely outside of, you know, essentially creating a new line of business that we'd have to.
Does anybody here in town do co-location?
There's nobody here in town I know. There's lots of co-location options in Louisville, and there's lots in Cincinnati. Level 3 has a really nice co-location center in Cincinnati.
Can you
There's
forward
some-
us some of those folks
Sure.
that
There's
have
some-
co-location?
There's some mom and pop stuff in Lexington.
I think Windstream probably in Lexington, they absolutely do co-location.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about Windstream. Yeah.
And they might be a good resource to at least go take a look and see what some of the requirements that they're usually stuck with from somebody that wants to rent or lease that space, be a starting place for us.
And that shouldn't be real expensive just to get them in and pick their brain, should it, a little bit?
That shouldn't cost anything, do it?
Right.
Yeah, as much money as we write to
Yeah.
Windstream every month.
Now you're talking, yeah.
I mean, it's a phone call, we can get started, it's kind of a short drive over there just to look. We've been in that,
Right.
we talked with Single Pipe way back when, that was at Windstream's facility down there. So that's a place at least we can go to.
And I think it's good to talk to everybody. I mean, there's certainly different scales of players. I mean, there's people that just have the open data centers with no security, and then there's the people with the individual suites. So,
I agree.
And we're probably in the middle of that somewhere,
And
right?
that probably goes back to the cost of what it's gonna take to retrofit what we have, because all of our stuff is pretty much wide open for the employees to use, and we're better in some areas than in some buildings than in others, and so it just depends, I guess, on how much you want to charge and what level of security you got for.
And what type of customer. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of customers will be good with just having a locked door on the front of the cabinet, and they'll never have anybody there, right?
Right. Yeah, traffic is a concern for us at the head end.
Sure.
And so that's, for us, is last thing we want is more traffic up
Right.
there.
Right.
But the Windstream sounds like a good option to get them in at least.
talk
That's a
about
low cost, no cost option.
No cost.
No cost. Denton likes that too. We love it.
And that'll help us identify some.
Yeah. And the level
some-
3 guys in
some things to
Cincinnati and the
look
rack space guys would be good guys to reach out to.
Yeah, we'll start off by interviewing those folks, and we'll come back with, you know, what came out of those meetings. We'll go from there.
Great.
Everybody want to take a little break here? We've been at it for about 2.5 hours.
Sure.
Session, budget discussion. We did our basic budget review over yesterday and today, and now we're talking about the suggestions or proposals that any board members may have about the budget. We've covered at least 3 subjects in that category. One was AMI implementation, another was energy efficiency, another one was facilities co-location. So do we have anything else?
I talked to John Higginbotham a little at the break. I know we've got money in the budget to do the customer survey on the skinny bundle and the Louisville Lexington channels. The Louisville Lexington channels, and if we could add to that survey, not that we've got anything on the table now or planned, but if somehow we could add a question to that about the clubhouse. I mean, I think at some point we're going to have to deal with that, and we're going to tear the place up there between the reservoir and everything else, that parking lot. So when it comes time to repaving it and restoring that up there, it'd be nice if we had some sense from the community of what they were expecting from up there. I mean, it makes a difference whether we set it up for, 100 parking spots, 75, 25. What's going to be the use of that? And if we're going to be putting money in landscaping and everything else, we ought to get some idea what the public wants to see up there when it's all done. And I don't know what the future or the best use of that building is, or we've pretty much had it out of service for how long, Herbie?
It's been a couple years.
So John, you're thinking what the public, how they might want to utilize it, or just what they want to see in?
Yeah, I mean, well, what they might want to utilize, and do they want to utilize it anymore? Has our demand moved? Because, when I first moved here, I know, it was the place in Frankfort for things. Well, now the hotels have rooms, there's all kinds of different rooms. We've now got this room here that could be available to the community. I don't know what the demand or best use of that down the road is, and at some point, we're going to have to put some money in up there. Bathrooms and some other things. I just don't have a feel And I think if we got a survey out there, one question's not gonna cost us any more.
Right.
No.
It'd be nice just to say,
Right.
and if people say, oh, you can't get rid of it, I wanna go back to having wedding receptions there or retirement parties, great. But if people say, nah, I ain't gonna use it.
We probably wouldn't be able to offer it until after the reservoir is built.
Right.
It's,
But I think we need to have some idea of what we want it to be, because when we do that landscape plan, we're gonna have to do a lot of repaving up there probably, with the trucks going in and out and busting up the asphalt, so we're gonna have some restoration work to do. And I just thought it'd be a good idea if we got a survey in the field to say,
It's
what do
a
you think about it?
landmark, and there's difference of opinion in the public about what we should do. I
And
agree
like
if we
every-
could go into that survey instead of having a lot of different surveys.
And one thing I've always found out about public surveys, and I love the ones they put in the State Journal, are you in favor of such and such? And people say, oh yeah. They never ask the second question. Are you willing to pay for such and such? And the answer always is people are for a lot and want to pay for nothing. So, the next one, and I know we beat this around a lot, but if we could, at some point in the next budget period, go on and pursue, David, this would be in your area, on the credit cards, of actually going out and getting a proposal, whether it's continuing to use Western Union or going with the direct service. And I just did a little research last night. KU, I think, is $2.25, and Kentucky American's $1.95, or reversed. But anyway, that's what they charge their customers for a credit card, and they do not subsidize that. They pass that through. But they charge a flat fee for the service, for the convenience. Now I don't know how that stacks up to our fee, and the thing we've always talked about is, would Frankfort Sewer, since their customers would benefit also, would they be willing to throw in, what is it, about 25% of our bill is theirs, their revenue, roughly?
Yeah, I can't remember right offhand.
Yeah, but I think our average bill is about
258.
Yeah, so I mean, just to find out, that doesn't obligate us to do anything, but to find out if we could get a better rate than the Western Union arrangement. I know there's some risk and things that have to be evaluated, but to see what that is, if Frankfort Sewer would throw in, and whether we subsidize or not, could we get our customers a better rate if they want to use it? And if it doesn't come in, we don't have to pursue it. I mean,
Sure.
But I think we ought to actually get some credit card companies to give us a hard number, and this is what we want your business for.
I guess
Yes.
go ahead.
Well, yes, and I had the credit card committee, and we haven't made any progress on that. The concept of card in hand, swipe it, the lowest rate possible. I don't think we still have an answer on that.
Yeah.
Well, that comes down to what our understanding of the payment card processing rules are. And this is what I'm going to ask the board if this would be an appropriate way to go. The way that the card is handled, physically processed, determines on the fee structure. If you swipe the card in office at the point of sale, then you must pay for the credit card fees as a cost of doing business. There's no customer convenience fee.
Are you sure that's the case in Kentucky?
That is my understanding.
Because that's the opposite of what the vendor that spoke to us in the credit card committee last year told us. They not only told us that we could do that in Kentucky, they sent us the KRS that set the fees for Kentucky. And Kentucky, he pointed out, was actually one of the more generous states that allowed the convenience fee.
My understanding is that if you swipe the card in office, then you cannot charge a convenience fee. But, so I guess let me say this, the RFP, would you like us to do an RFP that has the idea of both models, absorb and convenience fee, and see which one comes back with, you put essentially two RFPs out, or an RFP with two different
Well,
paths?
I guess my thought is that it's, I mean, I guess we'd call it an RFP, but most of that, the credit card processing to me seems more like a request for rates from a bank, right? Because we're just asking for transaction fees, right?
Yeah, I think there is my understanding, I think there is a true way that we handle the cost of credit card processing fees based on the way that you accept the card. So I think there is a difference in, if we swipe in office, convenience fee model goes away, and it's just a cost of doing business. So I know that we got to the point in the credit card committee where we had an RFP produced, and then there was some back and forth and disagreements on language, whether it's too broad or too narrow, and I just don't want to get back in that same situation.
I mean, it'll be pretty simple. Nothing simple, I know, but just Can we just basically find out what Columbia and LG&E and KU are doing?
Yeah, KU uses Paymentus. It's the same approach we use.
Mhm.
It is a third-party processor that charges the customer the convenience fee.
Mhm.
The customer pays.
And then
So-
KU's not absorbing anything, right?
No, they're using the same idea we are, convenience fee model.
But what's for an average customer, what would they pay on a $250 bill?
No matter, it's a 1.5% of your bill. It's
Okay.
$3.95. So today our rate is, on an average customer bill, residential bill of $258, it's 1.5%.
Okay.
And from what we can tell, the range in the industry is 2 to 6%, depending on
But I
how
think
good of a job you got on vendor
our goal
selection.
is to really specifically find out what is the absolute cheapest way we could handle credit cards.
Okay.
And that would, to me, be the definition of what we want to look at this point.
And then the option is still there whether we want to absorb it or the customer should pay the cost of
Right.
it. That's a
But,
separate.
yeah, the way it's processed and whether you have this middle person in there makes a difference in the final cost. So
Right.
we want to really see if we could offer that service to our customers at the absolute cheapest rate. So I think cluttering it up with asking a credit card provider for different options, maybe it doesn't work. We just want to know what is the rock bottom rate we could get.
Okay. Very
Yeah,
good, we'll do
and I'm
that.
not wed to us absorbing the cost. I'd just like to see, if nothing else, can we get a better deal for our customers?
Sure, we will do it.
The next one is one I hate to suggest, but I feel like we've got to deal with it in a sense that I would like to propose that for fiscal years 2017-18 for the budget, that we basically suspend the compensation plan. We award 2% to all employees on July 1st. We keep the money budgeted for the full compensation plan, and then we revisit it on January 1st, 2018, after we see what the governor does, if he has a special session, and what he does to the pension system, and what the ramifications are for that in cost.
So what you're saying is that you're concerned that we'd be paying our employees more than the state is going to do for their employees?
No. Well, I think there's one issue in that, looking at we know what the state's going to pay. Diane did the information. We know what the county is going to raise their employees, what the city's going to raise, what the school districts. We pretty much know, state's flat, all that. There's the other side of it is the more our payroll grows, if we go from an 19% match to a 30% match, that's another $800,000 out of the bottom line, which means we're going to have to come up with that. And that's out of the same revenue. I mean, either that or we're going to have to pass on a rate increase to our customers to pay for higher pension costs. And it won't just be us. The largest single participant in county employees' retirement is non-teaching school personnel. So schools will be hunting for revenue on property tax. The county will be hunting for money. The city will be hunting for money. The state government could be facing another $700 million. And I just think, I'm not proposing taking it out of the budget. We can always go back and retroactively handle it. I think I think it's on page 17. There's a whole list in there of various personnel actions that I think you anticipate, David.
Yes, sir.
Not talking about affecting any of those, but before we put extra discretionary money in, and I know the compensation plan was worked hard on that, but I mean, this is a semi-game changer for state and local government, and we just need to have a handle. I think the county is going to cost them almost $1 million more. I mean, it's real money if they do this, and I don't begrudge it, because if people who are currently retired or who hope to retire want to get their pension, it's going to have to be paid. I mean, the state's, between everything, it's almost $40 billion in the hole.
Right.
It's got to be paid sooner or later. And I just like to hold that till we know where this whole thing's going.
I mean, hope if there is a special session, if they address this subject this fall, then maybe we'll know where we are. So your proposal is to do the 2% January 1, just like we
July
are
1. July 1.
scheduled to do.
Yes.
Then this fall, we see what the state does, if anything, and then we can make a decision on the January.
And keep holding the money in the budget. Don't drop that money to the bottom line. Hold the money in the budget. And then if everything looks good and it's manageable, then we release those funds. If it's something that's going to be tough to deal with, then I think we can sit back and say, now where do we go? But I think everybody's going to be in the same boat scrambling. And it's going to be costly. County employee system's about 55% funded. The state's down to 13%. It's a day of reckoning on it this time. They probably kicked the can as far as they can.
Now, in the last couple of years, we've since this plan came on, we've tried to adhere to it. So we've adhered to it two years. And then recently, we made some adjustments because of difficulty in recruiting and holding on to certain categories of job people. So, as you know, the 2% that we've done for mid-tier and below, that was 2%. But then the rest of it is for above mid-grade. Last time around, we did 1.5% COLA, 1% merit. So how would you propose we adjust the COLA and the merit aspects?
I'm just operating on a straight 2%. Just, you can divide it any way. But that everybody on July 1 would get the 2%.
Or everybody, or just under the plan with mid-tier and below?
I thought the way it was set up was on July 1, everybody got the across the board too.
Everybody below midpoint, those above midpoint, it's at the board's discretion. So
Okay.
it sounds like you're saying those above get 2, those below get 2.
And then the final 2, we hold off till we see the January scheduled raises. We don't decide till, hopefully, the governor in the paper today said he'll call it after August 15th. But they've almost got to deal with it this fall because they can't go into that budget with a $700 million hole. I mean, they're either going to fund it or raise taxes or some combination.
So your thinking then is to budget a 2% all employees,
which is in essence
July
what you've got
1.
in the base already, right?
Right. We've got the compensation plan, which allows for 2% every 6 months for those under midpoint, and we have a 2% COLA in there today.
Yeah, but he's not saying just below midpoint.
No.
He's saying all employees.
I think he's saying essentially a 2% COLA for those above and the first 2% increase for those below.
Is that what you're saying?
And we would
Yes,
not pay any funds out of the second 2% in January 1. We would wait for board direction.
I think it's the prudent thing to do because this is over this business of the state and county. It's just a terrifying thing. It's just,
and we won't be alone. It's going to be.
The numbers are so big. I mean, the consequences are so great to us.
What about the plan that the board approved a couple months ago for the electric department?
That's already in the base, as I understand it, isn't it? Going forward in these numbers, the 400,000.
Yeah, as proposed at that time, July 1 would be the new effect of the new step progression for the electric department and the associated raises.
And you got that in this budget.
It is.
That 400,000 is already in here.
It is.
So you're saying adjust the electric as the board directed us to a couple of months ago, and everybody else is 2%.
2%. And then the final 2% for those below midpoint basically is deferred simply till January 1 or sooner, as soon as we know what the General Assembly does.
I guess one comment I have, if it's okay for me to say
Sure.
this,
Yeah,
is
please do.
that I'm concerned about the negative impact on our recruitment and, also employee engagement. And I know we talked yesterday that the city and the county have approved an increase above the 2% that we're considering. I understand the concern with the retirement system, but a lot of our frontline employees, they make less than $50,000 a year, and the 2% doesn't quite cover even just cost of living. So I understand the board has to make a decision, respect whatever.
And I don't disagree with you, but retirees are getting 0. KTRS retirees are getting 1.5. State government employees haven't gotten a raise in 10 years. I mean, and that's our market. That's the people who pay our salaries. And I think we've got to look at the market we're in and also what's coming up. It's not a matter of the employees not deserving it and recruiting it, but it's, we in fact, the same as government, we have the ability to tax. We do it through rates. And before we levy that, I just think we need to know what the whole picture is. And it may be that there's no reason to be concerned about it. I fear there is, but
I think that's one comment I would make is I understand you're talking about our base, but I think one thing that is not being included in there is while our customers may not be getting increases, if we're behind the pay compensation plan of what the average rate is being paid for those particular jobs. If we don't keep up with that program, we're going to have a hard time keeping our employees. And while I agree our customers, many of them may not be getting raises, I won't be able to keep the qualified people there to do the work for them at all. And in effect, I'm afraid what you're doing with that is you're doing very much what the retirement system has done, is you're not paying. I mean, the plan was we need to get the employees to what their rate is or we're going to lose them.
Right.
And if we delay that, you're somewhat creating, in my opinion, the same kind of problem the state did. You're just creating a day of reckoning later. That's what happened with the electric department. The market took off, and we were already behind, and we had that day of reckoning where we've had to make a massive change, and we already lost a number of good employees before that happened. So that would be my one concern that I would.
And I don't disagree with
say.
you, but if you look at total compensation, like for a state employee, the average health insurance package is $8,000. Ours is $13,000. For the county, it's $5,000. If you look at total compensation, and to me, I think for the employees, protecting their health insurance is as important, or the salaries are more, because that's tax-free. They're not paying anything for that benefit from a tax standpoint. So that's an important benefit to keep, because that doesn't have any Social Security or federal or state or occupational taken out of it. That's.
I think those were included, weren't they, in the pay compensation study? That was all part of what
it was comparable. It wasn't, it was competitive, but it wasn't a draw.
Because basically the study that the state just had to look at the whole retirement system is, as a whole, public employees are 12% below private market. When you add compensation they're +4. And it's the retirement system that's driving it. I mean, and the sad thing is, employees hired now aren't getting the same system that people who are in tier 1 or tier 2 are, but they're paying for it.
Right, and that goes back to kind of I guess my point is, we're offering less money to those people coming in, and they're not in the retirement system. They're going to overlook us, and I mean, we're having a hard time getting people in the door right now. I mean, HR can speak to it, but I'm just afraid it's going to get, I don't know, I just want to give my 2 cents. I think it's going to get harder. We're getting concerned with the quality. The water department especially is getting hammered right now with just, we can't find good applicants.
But we're not talking about changing starting salaries. We're not talking about taking away the COLA. We're talking about, for 6 months, seeing what the train changes to see what the world's going to look like the next 2 years. I'll be honest, I have a hard time believing that's a huge recruitment issue for 6 months. Now, you know more about personnel than me, but I
think the concept of, we made a plan, but now if we start to change the plan, I think that is a recruitment issue, because people look and say.
Well, when do you go to the ratepayers and say, when do the ratepayers say it's enough's enough? I can't pay anymore.
But I think, I understand. I'm just saying, when you show up and your employees are not quality employees because you're scraping the bottom of the barrel because you can't get the best, because you're not paying well, then your lights aren't coming on in time, your water's not getting done. I understand your point. I'm not trying to be.
I think that's an issue, but we could use that same argument across many issues. We're talking about spending $1 million on a Tanglewood fence, and that could be, some people would say, is that?
A lot of people are saying that.
Right.
Yeah, I can tell you that. A lot of people were saying it to me after the last meeting we had. There's a lot of people said, why can't we get a fence? A lot of people on Myrtle said, why can't we get a fence? I mean, I heard from them. And believe me, there's some hot people out there.
Yeah, we're tearing down a parking area that we paid for.
Exactly. There's $300,000 between the cost of building it and tearing it off.
Well, your proposal at least gets them the 2% that they would otherwise get.
Gets everybody
in the first
2%
half.
on July 1.
So, to that extent, we're on the plan. And that would be all employees. So you could argue that would cover what they might have gotten in COLA and merit above tier. So your plan really is to pretty much stay on the plan the first 6 months, and then we look at it.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll know by October. And they may not raise CRS. I mean, at the last KRS board meeting, they declined to raise it because CRS is wanting to argue they've been paying the employer share all along. It's not their fault.
Yes.
And they're not the same as the state. I don't know what they're going to do with them. And of course, county employment wants to pull out of KRS.
Yes.
They want their own system.
Yeah.
I don't.
Would it be possible just to keep what it is today in the budget, and then come October, if the doomsday hits, the board at that point can take action, correct?
I don't think you wouldn't want, though, if anybody had gotten, what would be the difference? The people getting the second round under the thing,
That
wouldn't
we-
get it till January, right?
Right, so that's what I'm saying, you have time to act as a board before January to impose a freeze. And you just keep it in the budget as is today.
I mean, my proposal was keeping the money in the budget
Right, that's what I'm saying, then you don't have.
and not
to take
taking
no
it out,
action.
not backing it out, is just
Right.
seeing
So,
if
I
that
mean-
was gonna trigger us even having to put more in the budget as a result of.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying, can
Yeah.
you just leave the budget as is, and then if that happens in October, then you can come back and do a budget amendment to freeze it.
Mm-hmm.
And that way it kind of covers what Ben's saying, if it's affecting recruiting, you're not touching the policy. But then October, the board as a whole looks at it and says, we need to do something, then you come back as a board and implement a freeze. Because you haven't paid the money till January 1 anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're fine, I mean, I'm just.
Oh, I mean, mine is just one to keep that option open, because we could be hunting for 800,000 or more.
Right. But, and like I say,
Yeah.
you're the board, so you can do that, I mean, you could do it in October, you could do it in September. I mean, you could still pass the budget the way it is today.
I mean,
That's.
it's
I think
6
you're
and 1/2
talking about the
dozen of
same,
that.
sounds like you're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
You're saying leave it in the budget. but
Which is
then
what
when
I
they
propose,
turn
not
out-
dropping the money down to the bottom line.
And if we get slammed hard next fall on this
Mhm.
retirement thing, we can make a decision then on the second half.
That's,
I don't know.
I don't care. I mean, that's.
Just the way you say it. it's the
Yeah.
same thing, yeah.
And the same way, Diane, looking at the health insurance, and that we're showing, I looked at the medical CPI, and it looks like it's grown about 6.5. So to hold our same benefits, same copay, same deductibles, we're budgeting in what, David, almost a 12, 11?
Based on the estimated amount, 2.7 is what MedBen, considering all of our medical history, that of our children, dependents, that.
And we're running
2.7.
2.5 this year.
2.4, I budgeted 2.8, so we're 400,000 below what we.
So if we take it up to 2.6, that would be allowing for a 6.5% increase in medical CPI. I mean, do you have a feel, Diane, we're going to experience more than average CPI?
No, I don't. I think we're probably, on target to, meet the, 2.6. I think 2.7 was maximum exposure or worst case scenario.
That was the expected claims, but based on where we've been since 2011 in that range, I would feel comfortable with 2.6. I mean, you could have a claim blow us out past that, but you could also be in the range where around 2.4 to 2.6.
Because if you had this year, if you had 2.8, we spend 2.4, 2.5, you're dropping 300,000 to the bottom.
Correct.
Which increases the reserve. So if we had extra claims, we've actually we've increased reserves by 300,000.
Yeah, that's helped us.
If we had to get it.
Yeah, that's helped us get to what we show as a recommended minimum, or things like that drop.
Because I think the health insurance benefits, like I said before, I think are really important, because that's a benefit our employees don't have to pay taxes on,
right?
Which is a whole lot better than cash for a lot of reasons. I mean, because healthcare costs can wipe somebody out.
Sure.
And I mean, I don't want to propose something that would cause us to have to change copays or deductible or coverages for the next plan year. And it's not a lot of money, but in the scheme of things, something I'd looked at.
No, I think you could moving it down 100,000 I don't think that's unreasonable.
Let's leave the pay business in the budget, leave the money there, but we'll defer a decision on the second half of it. So, yeah.
Do you want to, did we have enough discussion yesterday on the 1.7, the remaining money and the IT money, to come back with a plan and look at that?
Yeah, we didn't really close that up, did we?
And I know we got a draft this morning, preliminary on the report, and I hadn't had a chance to look at that.
I assume it's the same one that went out. I don't see John. I assume it's the same one that went out before. Yeah. I mean, I guess my thought is still to wait for the final and just, cool our jets until we have some sense of where
The money's still sitting in the budget, right?
Yeah.
The remaining money on that bond issue?
It is. I think the timing issue I don't think we have a whole lot of time if you want to use that money. And we mentioned you could use reserve funds to do whatever the board chooses to do. So,
did you were able to research on the drop dead on the 1.7?
I don't have a clear answer on whether just a commitment to spend is sufficient, or if you need to have truly spent the funds to be reimbursed.
And what does the definition of spend? Does it mean authorizing a purchase order and receiving part of the equipment, or you have to have 100% on receipt and have made the payment.
Yeah. So I will work to get an answer there. Yeah.
And how hard, on the stuff that we're talking about yesterday that you're saying, the things that are failing that need to be, if you order those type things, how long does it take to get those in?
12 weeks. 12 to 16 weeks is what they said. So it's 3 or 4 months. I'd be curious to understand, I know not all of you have read the information from Engineering Associates. He was definitive in his information to you guys of going forward with that and the information we provided them. What gives you pause to have to wait for the full report when there's that definitive in the report that he gave us this weekend? I'd just be curious to understand that.
It's probably, I guess from my perspective, it's probably a large conversation, and I'm not sure we want to suck up everybody's time. We can pull that offline if you want to chat about it later, John.
Absolutely. Our issue is timing. Timing of not only ordering the equipment, getting it in here, and getting started on getting the project up. It's going to slow us down during the winter time. We want to complete the project as quickly as possible. The quicker we can get the project done, the quicker we can add to the reliability of our network and offer even faster speeds to our customers. So the longer we wait, the longer our customers wait on reliability and faster internet speeds. It's really that simple for the staff. We want to do it as quickly as we can. So Engineering Associates is, in my personal opinion, definitive in the paperwork they gave us the last few days. So I just don't understand the reason to wait, but be happy to hear those comments at a later time.
We had the discussion earlier, and I guess if we want to put in some language, Mr. Chairman, if we do receive any unanticipated non-recurring funds, that I think the majority of those funds probably need to be at least semi-directed to what we may have to do to finish up the reservoir. And then, like I said, we've talked about, and it won't be on the board agenda, I guess, till June. This is June, but the regular meeting about the sidewalks.
Oh, right, June 20th.
And then if we want to do anything for the energy assistance, which would be non-recurring money that we take our regular revenue.
Yeah, there's a winter care piece on your remittance advice that you can fill in,
Right.
and anybody
You're saying that
could
doesn't give
contribute.
much money?
It's extremely small. I mean, maybe under $100 a year across.
Very small.
150 a month. Okay, I had a month. Very small compared to.
And how's it, I mean, we collected, who then, does Monique, do your people decide who gets it, or who decides who gets the money? All, what, $1,800? I mean, how's it decided who gets what?
We don't have any of that decision. They have to apply to the different agencies that are sponsoring those.
So we send the money to some.
It's remitted to. I can't. I'm missing the name of the agency, but they take care of the structure of the program and dispersing funds.
So if we earmark funds, it would go to them, as opposed to us?
It would go to the agency, and they have a set of, my understanding, of policies on who gets it.
But would the money be guaranteed to only be used for our customers?
I don't have enough details to know about that.
Yeah, I think that's important.
Yes, yeah.
To know if it goes into a bigger pot or if that money would be earmarked just for residents of Frankfort.
That's a good question to look into.
We can check on that, but I believe it's earmarked for, the different counties have funds earmarked for their individual counties. So what comes into the community action here is earmarked for Frankfort and Franklin County customers, I believe.
Okay.
But we can check on that and get back to you.
That's everything I've got.
Okay, anything else, folks? Okay, well, we've got a special, another meeting, believe it or not, special meeting coming up Monday, or Tuesday, 5 o'clock, same time, same place.
So, Mr. Chairman, or David, what have we got based on what we talked about today? Then goal idea is that on June 20th, you'll bring us back the revised document.
Yes, sir. That
And
we will
be prepared to vote on it.
That is what we would like. We would like to have it approved and move on to the next year.
We can treat ourselves and our staff most fairly by being able to act on a budget in a regular meeting and not have a last hour budget.
Well, we started early this year, so
Yes.
I think that helped.
I think everybody has tried hard. And, Okay, unless somebody else says anything else on budget, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.